OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It's 7:30 on a Monday morning where it's very difficult to know exactly where to start after the weekend's mayhem in the world of GAA. All the newspapers are starting the front page pictures of the apparent gouging or the alleged gouging. They're all being very careful with their language in the game yesterday. But Owen, you were there. You had a ringside seat for it. Your footage is circulating on Twitter as we speak. Is it? Did you put a post in the end?
I actually didn't do.
You didn't
do that at the end. Yeah, it didn't load in Croke Park.
Right. And then there was events overtook you.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's why you want to kind of like tut a Brawl while saying please watch my video on social media, everybody, and try and cash in those sweet views. So unfortunately, that didn't materialise really, and I'm sure everybody's.
Not too late now, is it? I mean, I think it's going to be the Zapruder film really to try and get people off.
Kind of, or is the reality just that not much happened except for one obvious thing?
I don't know. I don't know about that. There was plenty of wrestling to the ground. There was plenty of that neck wrestling that was definitely supposed to be something that they were clamping down on. And was there a few kicks on the ground? Was there a stamp as well in the middle of it? No, obviously everybody's focused almost exclusively on the gouge. Fair enough. It's like it's the A bit. That's the most important part. That's the lead. But I'd say maybe they just decide, do you know what? All-Ireland semi-final, can't really be having half a team against Derry. Wouldn't be fair under the circumstances. Away you go. Is that what happens? Is that what we think happens?
Like, as you think that Galway could otherwise be in with a raft of suspensions?
Well, I mean, that's what's happened this year. Okay, they'd be within. Sorry, exactly what's happened this year. Maybe I'm killing our next bit here, but a raft of suspensions, and then the week of the game they'd all get off. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what we telescope that down to. Okay, look, it was pretty bad, but don't do it again. Or here's like a 20 grand fine for the county board. So I don't know.
It would have been interesting had David Goff been the referee in that first game as opposed to the second game, because he's obviously been the only referee who's properly taken this on, and he did so earlier this year in the Armagh Tyrone situation with the multiple red cards after that particular brawl. I wonder what was the inquest after that. Like, is that how the game should be refereed? Is that how a brawl should be refereed? Or
yeah, I don't know. Well, look, because I'm stamping on the bit that we're about to do when it comes to the performance rankings. So OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. How was the night afterwards, though? And that's really what I want to care about. Okay, so here, performance rankings coming. Ireland-Georgia preview tonight. Anthony Moyles in studio 8:10. Sports pages 8:35. Alan Quinlan from Down Under at 8:50. Aaron Kernan to pour over the coals of the Armagh situation at 9:10, and in the papers looking back at the live golf stuff. How was the night afterwards, Alan? What was Dublin aflame? That's what I want to know.
Well, not like the night wasn't like very good or wild. I am here this morning.
I know, but in body, are you here also in spirit?
I'm here also in spirit.
Okay, there's a timbre to your voice that's a bit, it's peachy.
It is peachy. Monday morning peaches is what the situation always is. It was. It looked like it was going to be a decent night, but no. As I say, I'm here.
You made your excuses and left.
I made my excuses and got home in time in plenty of time for the Sunday game to rewatch all the great football and brawl that we got over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, okay, let's get into it. It's time for the Gillette performance rankings.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Oh yeah, Roy Keane. He's even not even a mention of Roy Keane at this stage now. It's so old news after what happened yesterday.
The fact that he was sitting in the stands on Saturday.
I saw Joe tweeting this, and I felt the same in the moment that he was about to stick his finger up to the camera. But that was one part of it. I don't know if everybody actually watched the person sitting beside Roy Keane doing an old excavation of the nose and then a bit of a roll, and just before the camera goes, a flick, and you're like, oh my God. But nobody really noticed because it's like Roy Keane sitting beside him who's giving his mate a bit of crap for something that happened and then turning back to the camera, and it looks like just about to give the whole stadium the fingers. But it didn't happen.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not.
Go back and check the nose picker though.
Yeah.
No nose picking allowed in public. If you're going to do it, put a tissue in front of it. Shield us from your disgrace.
Is that like some sort of metaphor for the Cork footballers on Saturday? Is there like a segue here that we're looking for?
I mean, the Cork footballers right, whatever the Cork footballers is coming, whatever's coming for the Cork footballers should be coming for the Mayo footballers. We'll deal with that in a minute. But, like, lads, Mayo, I don't know, who's in red?
Yeah, well, Mayo are in red. We're going to get to that in just a sec. But the Brawl is kind of where we have to start this morning as something, I guess. Like, I mean, as far as brawls go, you would have to say that it was probably in the red as well, because other than the eye gouge, where were the flashpoints in this?
No. Oh, and I think I thought it was immediately into the top 3 or 4 Croke Park brawls. Come on.
Like, I mean, so obviously the standard setter is 1996.
Yeah,
and
you've done a whole documentary about it.
Yeah,
and
but
so
that
therefore
was a
you're
brawl.
wedded to that, right? You love that more than all of the other brawls because the passage of time has eased the pain, etc., etc.
Well, let me just pull back let me pull back the curtain on yesterday a little bit. So the tweet that wouldn't load for me because there was too many people in Croke Park was something, I don't know what the caption was, something desperately unfunny as per usual, which was like, this is masquerading between a schmozzle and a brawl on the spectrum. So I didn't even classify it in the tweet that never got sent as a brawl, because I didn't see the eye gouge actually happen, and I just thought it was just like a massive situation of people pulling and dragging, and those headlocks was really annoying headlocks.
Can we take the eye gouge out of it for a second?
Yeah.
And just because obviously that's going to be its own separate issue. It's horrific. It looks absolutely grim, and it's on the front of all of the papers. That's the very front cover, not of the sports section of the Irish Times, but of the actual newspaper itself. It's on one of the tabloids. Eyesore is the picture, and it's Comer smiling afterwards, I think, so he doesn't seem to have been too damaged, thankfully. Oh no, Pete's Love Island is the headline. Pete Taylor got married again. That's the only of the front pages. He was able to knock them off on that one. And then I think this one is the Sunday Shame, Gouging Horror, Mars Game. That's the Sun. So the gouge is absolutely despicable, and we don't want to make light of the gouge, and there should definitely be a lengthy suspension handed down, particularly because the person involved wasn't part of the matchday squad, and so therefore, is this a legal issue? Should it be a legal issue? Should we start making definitely all of that conversation should happen, 100%. But taking the brawl on its merits, apart from that, I think it's definitely right up there, right? You've got management from both teams centrally involved in the midst of it, like horsing lads out of it, being peacemakers before my phone melts. They were definitely being peacemakers, but that immediately elevates it from just the two teams. No,
I think it felt elevated because of the context of it, that we had just witnessed what felt at the time like one of the most spectacular collapses in a knockout football game, or one of the greatest comebacks you're likely to see. And then all of a sudden you have this flashpoint at the end where Armagh have got under Galway's skin, and it's being manifested in a brawl. You could make an argument that the brawl was just a really bad idea by Armagh, and I don't want to say who started it, but it does feel like obviously the James Morgan yapping at full time is a central part of it is one of the matches that's used to bring this whole thing to fire. And I'm not sure if he had his time back he would try and light that match again, because coming back from 7 points down late on, scoring 2 late goals, it's a pretty good way to get under the opponent's skin. That brawl, I wonder, at the end, does that give Galway an extra bit of a kick? You saw Sean Kelly's face when he saw the eye gouge. He was furious, absolutely furious with what he had seen, and rightly so. He's bringing that energy into the dressing room at full time. That collective energy going out into extra time. I wonder did the brawl actually serve Armagh well at all? They are the common denominator with a lot of the big brawls we've seen this year. I can understand why you might try and start a flare-up at certain points in the game to take the energy out of the game, to get under the opponent's skin, and Armagh have always been very, very good at doing that. I'm just not sure it actually... I think Galway might have been the winners, even though one of their guys got eye gouged. I think they might have been the winners as a result of this. I think it just completely, I don't know, it gave them maybe an extra kick of energy. Maybe not. The gap in between full time and extra time was extraordinarily long anyway.
Unbelievable.
It just was what are we doing? We're waiting and waiting and waiting.
Why do they go off the field? Why do they have to go off the field? At full time in a game where it's a draw, sorry lads, you've got 3 minutes, we're changing ends, away we go.
Yeah.
Everything has all been telescoped, and the conversation is now there are too many. The penalties has become this big thing. You're like, lads, shut up, right? We knew what the rules were in advance. If you were this exercised by it, show up at Congress, put your hand up, go to a meeting in your club and say, I'd like to put a proposal for it, because we all knew what was coming. So just shut up about the penalties and get on with it for now. If you want to change it, let's have that conversation at the end of the year. Many other things happened yesterday of far more far greater significance in the penalties. I lost that there because why didn't RTE cut the footage? Don't need people seeing this, says David Tomley. I'm like, what? Imagine they cut the footage. Of course we need to see it. That's the whole point.
So what happened on TV?
They were about to go to a break. And then the fight started. And they're like, oh well, we just keep an eye on this, see what happens. And then it kept getting bigger and bigger. And I think it lasted about a minute, did it?
Longer. I think my video was a minute and 20 seconds.
Right.
So that is a lengthy enough brawl. And I just like with the amount of people involved, there was like 3 mini schmozzles within it. So the momentum just kept going and going and going until everybody eventually got totally exhausted. But there's just so many different elements to it all, like as well. Even kind of that instance earlier than that, where was it earlier than that or later than that, where the umpire just told, telling everybody down with that sort of thing.
That was the end of normal time.
That was in the normal time, right?
Little did he know.
Little did he know what was about to happen. Like he's the guy who's at fault for this. He's the guy who really wound them up. You can't tell us what to do, umpire. Is what Armagh thought. Like for me, like it was quite unusual that this was a game that this happened with. Like at half time, there was no sense of any sort of nastiness going down the tunnel. This was a complete. The second half just took on a whole life of its own in this game. I thought the first half was grand. I did see people at half time like raving about the first half of the game.
Yeah,
I thought it was fine.
Yeah,
I thought Galway were desperate at the start, and it actually felt a little bit pedestrian at times, that first half, and then the second half just took off like a rocket. And for me, one of the moments where I first realised that this was going to have a little bit something spicy about it was when Conor Mackin came on with his goggles and immediately starts verbally possibly abusing the man he was marking, arms around him sort of thing. The Galway man yapping back at him. I'd love to know what he was saying to him, but he was sent out there with a message to get right inside the head of the Galway man. And the red card obviously is a significant enough thing. I think Armagh felt particularly aggrieved when they saw it live. In the stadium, you don't know that actually the referee probably got it right. You just have no idea.
Again, being in the stadium, being an inferior product to being at home watching on TV, like
sometimes.
Come on.
What a call by Coldrick. Coldrick was reffing it, right, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what a call to get that in real time, because when I saw it, I was like, well, that's shoulder to shoulder. To make those decisions in real time was really, really difficult.
There's an eruption of blood. I think that helps. I think that definitely helps with your decision. Is like, okay, there's blood. How did that happen if it was shoulder to shoulder? Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, how did he cut his head? Was it a clash of heads? Because the Armagh man definitely goes down and makes it look like there's a clash of heads. But I think that gave him a bit of confidence that something more has happened here.
Yeah.
And it's not that he's led with the head or he's led with the elbow. It's that there's a recklessness to it, and that's the bit that allows me to brandish the red card, which was a correct decision. Like, you have to say, Galway were clearly the better outfit over the 90 minutes of gameplay, but are so flaky that they can't be trusted themselves. Like, the one thing about the nastiness, there was definitely an air where there was an off-the-ball challenge on Shane Walsh, which was almost in exactly the same spot as he'd been done last year by Mayo, in a very similar situation where he's like writhing in the turf, holding his surgically reconstructed shoulder. And you're like, I mean, if this doesn't inspire Galway to go and fight fire with fire, but it didn't really. Like, it seemed to just make them more retreat into their shell as the game went on. And then for Shane Walsh to be the player who kicks the ball across the field aimlessly to give Armagh the opportunity, you're like, well, this is, as you said, one of the all-time great GA collapses. And for them to come out of that, the other side, bruised and still going, I don't know what happens now. I don't know what happens now to Galway. I don't know what to think of them after yesterday.
Neither do I. I actually think we're going into a semi-final weekend, which is like Galway Armagh times two, where both games are kind of a toss of a coin when it comes to predictions, and that's a really exciting prospect. Yesterday, Galway Armagh was the most extraordinary GA game I've ever seen live, and it's something very, very, very dramatic will have to happen in the future for it to be topped. I'm not saying it's the best game I ever saw. As I said, I think the first half was actually overrated, but it was the most extraordinary GA game I've ever seen live, and it probably won't be topped. The energy in that stadium was absolutely incredible yesterday. It was Armagh Day. It was just a sea of orange everywhere you looked. I've never seen, it was like a throwback to the 90s with the amount of flags that the Armagh people had clearly been instructed to bring into the canal end with them, and it was just this incredible afternoon. Like on the Galway point, I really thought they were so bad in that first half, but yet they go in at half-time level. Like, does that actually point to maybe an element of steel that we're not giving them credit for? And another, like maybe that's just Armagh not capitalising enough on their, I guess, a little bit of dominance that they had in that first half, not getting enough scores. But there was something plucky about Galway going in at half-time level. Like, I just didn't think that they were level pegging at all. I do agree, though, second half I thought they were much the better team, as was evidenced by being 6-7 points up at one stage.
Didn't they also have a late collapse against Roscommon that didn't actually matter because they were so far ahead?
Yeah,
haven't they had these late collapses? Exactly. Haven't they had these late collapses over recent years? So, like, it's in them to do this. And if they can just get that out, then they could win these games by 7 to 10 points. Like, so it's really weird. And
why didn't Armagh kick the ball in high and long more after they discovered that this was actually something that might prove fruitful for them? I just couldn't get my head around it. Like,
it was a completely anyway. You go and listen to GA late night. If you want,
that is absolute essential listening.
If you want some Armagh voices telling you what they thought should have happened with those long balls going in, raining in.
Like, the thing for Galway, like, was maybe it's just like lazy analysis, but it definitely felt that, you know, if Armagh could, like, stop Conroy and Walsh and Comer, they would have stopped Galway, and that goes for every team. And maybe, I'm not sure, is it just because the lads have been around with the team a little bit longer than some of the other players, but it definitely feels that there's kind of like a B-side to this Galway team, or felt that way.
Yeah.
But they all stepped up yesterday, like McDade, Finnerty, and Tierney. They were the three for me where it was like, okay, this is an arrival moment for those three players where you know, they can disprove that they're not of the quality of those three aforementioned players, that they can be the leaders of a team, aka having enough players now to go and win in All Ireland.
But maybe they're overthinking games. Maybe they're trying to manage games and they're not quite at the standard of team who are able to manage games. They just need to keep doing what they were doing, as opposed to, we're going to turn into Dublin here and play keep ball for the last 7 minutes of the game and bore because they can't do it. They've been blatantly unable to do it, as opposed to trying to continue going for it and trying to score. So we'll come back to that because we've loads of time to talk about Galway. An unbelievable game to be at. Not good for Galwayman's heart on the incident. Looks like pushing and shoving before the gouge. A few punches thrown by Galway subs. Kelly should be okay for Derry. I think so. I can't see.
Oh man, he has to play.
Anthony Ryan says, in every other tunnel teams go in and out of the same tunnel. Why is this too much to ask for in GAA? I don't know. I mean, I think in a lot of other sports aren't actually, you're not like hopping off your direct opponent. It's not like part of the rules where you're literally allowed to shoulder your direct opponent to try and knock him down. Like in soccer, you can just about get away with that, but it never happens. So, like, you know, it's a completely different thing. GA brings new meaning to the term tunnel vision, says Kenny the dad. Brawl aside, Rian O'Neill, what a player, says Philip Nolan. Like, I mean, unfortunately, Rian O'Neill's equaliser, which should be one of the all-time great GA moments, is going to be like the C or D story from everything that happened. But like, what a, you know, yeah, I'll do this, no problems.
And Coulter didn't let them take the quick free kick. They get the free kick and they kick it backwards. And then Coulter tells them, stop, no, you got to retake that free kick. And then they realise, actually, we can pop this over the bar. That, I don't know, like, I mean, does that circle us back to the first half of this game? Armagh not believing that they can, you know, actually rack up a bit of a score here, not actually capitalising on a bit of dominance, as I said, against Galway in that first half, not knowing that in that moment you have a person who can kick the ball over the bar. Like, I don't know, it's like it's at the end of an absolutely mental game, so I'm sure that it's hard to be completely thinking clear.
Owen Hurley says, lads are too ballsy because they know they'll be pulled apart. Should just do what ice hockey does and let them at it. Give them 2 minutes in the sin bin to chill out afterwards. Third man in gets a red. It's like a concussion issue around that. You know, lots of people have had CTE as a result of multiple beatings that they've taken in ice hockey. Cause of the scuffle and any egregious provocation can get looked at by the fourth official. Philip Nolan says, sure, look, the Gouger took it home from the Galway sub immediately afterwards. Job done, move on. There was a bit of rough justice handed out. Anyone else notice the guard in the top corner of the picture with his arms folded? Well, there was another guard who was like getting involved, who was like pushing people apart, going, here, well, stop this, lad, stop it. She was at least doing her job. The rest of them were like, I mean, I don't know, maybe they're told not to do anything. Maybe they're actually told, if you do get involved, then it becomes a Garda matter, whereas actually your job is to police the crowd. The sporting event is looked after. I don't know. It's all a bit of a grey area, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like could you whip out the baton and start wading in on the lads, going, stop it, get back. Can you imagine that?
Your man, like everybody.
Because if this happened on the street, that's what they'd be doing.
Everybody getting pepper sprayed.
Yeah. Jack Emeraldo says some of the Some of the fight promotions have neutral ninjas all dressed in black. They jump in and they pull the lads apart. That would be amazing. Can you imagine the list of volunteers? Who's your neutral? Like every corner boy from every small town in Ireland volunteering to come up, dressed all in black with their gimp mask on, to get in and be the one to pull them all apart. Right, lots of comments coming in. We need to move on. What's next?
We're going to be coming back to that game in a sec. I fear we might run out of time, but let's just move to Mayo, because they're also in the red this morning because they were bad yesterday, and like there's probably wider questions that are going to be asked around Mayo over the next little while. James Horan didn't really kind of like comment on any of those issues yesterday, as you might expect. Right after the game, he wasn't going to make an emotional response to questions around his future, around players' future, and to be honest, it's not up for him to be talking for the players' futures anyway, for some of them that might be deciding whether or not they're in or out for next year. It does feel that this could be the end of Horan Mark II. Like it does feel like this is a big old climb next year for them to get back to an All-Ireland final again. Granted, they were missing a couple of players yesterday, and that definitely impacted their season somewhat, the injuries that they have sustained, and it's been a bit of a turbulent season for them. But it does feel this is kind of a little bit of a full stop in the current part of Mayo and their story. It feels that like something new has to happen for them to get back to the All-Ireland final next year. They were just so bad yesterday, and like maybe some people did see it coming. I thought there was a higher level of performance in them, and it just didn't happen, especially in that second half.
They were abysmal in the second half. When it was right there for them, when the opportunity had presented itself, they couldn't take it. Like, that's the end of the golden generation of Mayo football. It is officially over. Whatever happens next is a new generation, and it's a new team. But like, that team that we came to know and love as the main team that went toe to toe with the Dubs is over. And I think, like, there's nothing that they can do. The point you make about the injuries, right? And I see some of the Mayo people who are good Mayo football fans who are like, hang on a second now, we didn't have our full team out. You never have your full team out. You really never have your full team out.
Especially not this year.
In any situation though, ever. Yeah. Do you know, like, Kerry have their best player playing on one wing and some other issues around selection at the moment. The Dubs have, their two most important players out, but they're still going on. Like, that's what happens. There's never been a year where all the Mayo players were all fully fit and all available at one time, because that's how the game works. And so you can't point to the injuries as being the thing, next year it's going to be grand because of the injuries, because other players will just get injured. They don't have the strength and depth to be able to do it. Their biggest opportunity, it turns out, was last year, and they couldn't do it. And then this year, when the opportunity was there for them again against a Kerry side who were sputtering because they actually haven't had the challenge that they need or the football that they need, and weren't performing particularly well, they still couldn't get it done. And in the end, they weren't even close to getting it done. They got absolutely annihilated, really, yesterday. Once you kind of parse what happened, Kerry were ruthless, Mayo weren't. Kerry are a far superior team to this Mayo team, and therefore Mayo are no longer in the conversation as All-Ireland contenders. No matter what happens next year, go and win the league, I still won't trust you. Like, I actually won't trust this Mayo team again until they're climbing the steps, because they can't do it.
Like, I do think, though, the last couple of years, like getting to those two All-Ireland finals, like, unless it's just been a dramatic drop-off this year.
They beat Tipperary in the semi-final.
Yeah, I know, like...
I think you just kind of...
They beat Dublin in a semi-final.
Big mark through COVID, so fair enough. They beat the Dubs last year, but like...
I think that there's like... I'm not saying... Like, I'm not necessarily saying what you're saying is wrong, but I just feel that there is this notional thing with Mayo about their ceiling. Like, what can this group of players achieve? And
they can't kick the ball over the bar from scoring positions.
And yet they still beat one of the greatest teams of all time last year. So what does that say? Like, I mean, if you can't kick the ball over the bar and you're still beating Dublin, like, that to me suggests a team with a ceiling that is greater than what we saw yesterday. Like, I don't think yesterday is a real representation of where Mayo should be at.
But like, they were horrible against Kildare. Like, they were really fluky to win that game. Like, they should have gone out in the last round. And that's the level they're at the moment. They're a quarter-final team at the moment.
They're playing like a quarter-final team. I think that the Mayo fans could possibly have expected a little bit more from them this year. Like, and granted, once you draw Kerry in a quarter-final, you're not favoured to win that game. Kerry could well go on to win the All-Ireland, and that could... they may look back and say that they were always going to lose that game. It just feels there's like, have they absolutely maximised everything, even given the injuries this year? I wonder. Was there a style of play going to be something that would give Kerry serious problems?
I don't know about that. That's a good question.
Like, Kevin McLaughlin absolutely needs to nail that goal opportunity in the first half, and he doesn't. But like, that comes down to one person in one moment, and in a big day in Croke Park, that ball can easily fly over the bar. Paul Ganey absolutely botched a brilliant opportunity in the first half as well. So to me, the game plan wasn't set up in a way to unlock that Kerry defence enough to give Mayo good quality goal chances, and they needed to score goals to beat Kerry. Granted, Kerry do not give up goal chances at the moment, so that's a very difficult thing to do. But I just feel the Mayo style of play that would have given Kerry lots of problems in 2017 would not give Kerry problems yesterday, and it probably turned out that way.
This has the bang of the Germany annihilation of England when Frank Lampard scored the goal that should have been given but wasn't given, and that was the end of the golden generation. That's the end of that team, I think, as far as that team goes. Alan Moore says the point about the injuries in Mayo, they were missing their best two scoring forwards in O'Donoghue and Conroy, but last year they were missing Killian and he was their best scoring forward, and the previous year somebody else was injured, and that's the thing, like, somebody's always going to be injured. You're always going to be missing some of your best players. That's how this goes. Some players will walk away, some players will take time off. Like, that's just the rules of engagement when it comes to Gaelic football. You never have a full deck to deal with, so stop whining about not having a full deck and deal with the deck that you have, and then come at us and say, okay, well, we're good enough.
And there isn't time anymore in the condensed season to allow these injuries to heal. I think probably a backdoor route is more taxing now, given the condensed season. We saw that all 4 provincial winners did win at the weekend. Granted, stats like that, we can sometimes get carried away and overanalyse it, but maybe we'll see over the next couple of years, if the split season continues, that actually is the way to go. You need to be winning your province to win the All-Ireland. So I think the injuries thing, it did impact Mayo, just the exact type of injuries they got. They might have sustained even an Oisin Mullen injury better than they would have sustained a Ryan O'Donoghue injury, just given the lack of scores in the forwards. And I know Mayo people are pissed off around that analysis of you don't have scores in the forwards, because, the backs and their scores all count as well. It's not about forwards versus backs, it's about the volume of scores. Yeah. Having options on the pitch, you can get scores.
It's actually about players who are going to hit 70, 75%.
Like, if you've got Cillian O'Connor who's missing straightforward frees, it's going to be a very, very difficult day. Now, the flip side is, when you've got Aidan O'Shea pinging over 45-yard efforts off the outside of the boot, you start to think it is going to be Mayo's day. So, very Mayo is probably the conclusion on all of that.
Yeah, Mayo-esque. It's a bit Spursy. Right, next.
Penalties, Amber. I'm not having penalties in the red, because that seems to be the conclusion, I think, isn't it? That, penalties bad, penalties soccer, penalties not GAA. So I think we've got to separate how sorry we feel for Armagh with whether or not penalties is a good or a bad idea.
It was brilliant. Now, I think that, was it a toss to decide which end it was?
I don't know, I presume so.
Or was it just always going to be at that end? I don't know. Is it is there a cameras or something issue? I don't know. But certainly Into the Hill, it's iconic. It's a big opportunity missed.
In Croke Park, though, was iconic enough for me. I just kind of trying to absorb as much of this as possible. I'd never seen a penalty shootout live in GEA before, and even just little bits like seeing the Croke Park scoreboard working as normal, a 4-0 to 1-0 sort of thing.
Is that what it did? Yeah.
With the goals, the tally in brackets, so it was 12-3. As the penalties were actually happening, and also the umpire going when the Galway man or the Armagh man hit the post and it went wide, they'd lost basically, and the umpire still waved it wide, and it was rubbing salt into the Armagh wounds, Stephen Campbell crying on the turf and the umpire going wide. Actually no, that was a point. Did the umpire wave the white flag? I'm not quite sure. Just the little kind of the Croke Park specifics of it all was very, very enjoyable. I think penalties absolutely has a place in the GEA. It is a rule that exists in open play. I don't understand the thing that it's not a skill.
It's not a skill they practice. It turns out they do.
Galway were practicing all year.
It turns out they do practice it. And they should be practicing it, and it makes sense to practice, and it's part of the rules, and everybody knew what the rules of engagement were before the competition started, so you didn't care that much about it when it came up for conversation the first time round. Okay, so now you've seen it, fair enough, you have an opinion, great, welcome. And maybe golden score would be better, maybe it would be better.
So interesting.
But, come on.
The one thing I would say is that, as on a selfish level, I mean, that open play, extra time and second half of normal time, they were just brilliant like brilliant times of football, like, and you just want more of that. Yeah, and like, I mean, we were talking about Kerry Mayo 2014 in the show last week, like Kerry Mayo 17, all the great Kerry or Mayo Dublin replays. A replay does have like an epic feel to it as well. 2 games, it's like kind of like a multi-game series. It feels brilliant. Like, I wonder if actually you get to a certain stage in the season, it does go replay, and then for the second replay, for the replay, then you have the penalty shootout option.
Well, that's what they're doing for the All-Ireland final, right?
Is that what it is, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realise that. So that could be the solution for once you get to the knockout stages. But like, I mean,
no time in the calendar for a replay here, though.
Like,
right?
we got to realise why penalties were brought in. Penalties were brought in because we wanted more definition in the GEA calendar. We wanted to know when a conclusion would begin and when it would end. And I guess if people are complaining about, club fixtures being pushed back all the time, then like penalties and winner on the day was a solution to it. And it's like really, really unique, and I was so happy when the game went to penalties on this Sunday, because like it's just not something I'd seen before.
One last point about this, and so Armagh go a point up, right? Why didn't they just do what Dublin did and squash everybody
down?
What?
Pull everybody to the ground, yeah.
So,
I was expecting that to happen.
And the ball is down, it's a Galway kick out. Why didn't they just, at that point, black card everybody? Come on, ref, what are you going to do? Like,
yeah.
Because if I mean, maybe Galway can work a goal, but it's very unlikely. And where does the ball get restarted from? If everybody does it at the same time, I thought it was the most Armagh thing of all time to just like, right, everybody, here we go.
Maybe they hadn't got. Maybe like that. That's just part of a team's development. That actually the little bit at the end of the knockout game in Croke Park is actually something hard to figure out. Like, which I think maybe makes Derry's performance, which we'll get to in a moment, all the more extraordinary on Saturday. Is that
we've 2 minutes left here, Max?
Yeah, they just showed up to Croke Park and just pumped Clare. Like, I mean, it was just.
They also delightedly, one of my favourite things that they've done is like punctured the whole, Derry will win nothing like that in Croke Park, and then they're like, what? So teams who are really good defensively who come through the Ulster Championship, they've got a really bad record in Croke Park, don't they? Oh no, wait, hang on a second, they don't.
To be fair, no, I'll hold my hands up and say on Friday morning I said Derry Clare is going to be a lot closer than people expect. I was completely wrong. I did expect Clare to give Derry a serious rattle, and it was because they went to Croke Park and they beat Roscommon a couple of weeks previous, and I wouldn't necessarily have thought, certainly at the outset of the year, that Roscommon are that much off Derry. So I just thought it was going to be a much better game. I did also say, though, that if Derry get an early goal, this could be it's obviously going to be a Derry win, and that's exactly what happened. The early goal, it's not just the volume of goals that Derry are scoring, it's the timing of them. Getting early goals, Rory Gallagher just goes absolutely ballistic on the sideline.
Well,
he's spitting everywhere, and like it is amazing. He looked like it's from minute one.
Higher and higher and higher and higher. How does he follow it up?
From minute one of this championship, Derry have looked like they're on a path that is just going to end in them winning the All-Irelands. I am convinced that the Dublin Kerry side of the draw will not want this team in the final.
No, they want Galway.
I think they do.
They want Galway.
But by the same token, I could very much see Galway winning the semi-final. The one thing I'd be just really concerned about is just the way Armagh pumped loads of high ball in on top of that Galway goalkeeper and got massive goal opportunities off it. Derry, with Route 1, score a lot of goals. That could be a perfect storm in a very, very bad way for Galway. We'll
come back to this a little bit later on, because we've got Anthony Moyles outside, we've got Aaron Kernan coming on a little bit later on, so plenty of time to talk about Derry. Who else is in green?
Padraig Harrington, US Senior Open champion, his first major on the over 50s tour. Won it last night at Saucon Valley. Walking around the greens, fist pumping on his back nine. Like things got pretty nervous for him in the latter stages of this tournament. He took a 5-shot lead into the final day, ended up winning by 1. It was Steve Stricker that he beat. Obviously, Stricker getting one over Padraig Harrington as captain of the Ryder Cup last year. You could kind of feel that the American golf commentators wanted Stricker to win. So Harrington, was the big up yours to American golf commentators.
720 grand. Yeah. Not bad for a week's work in your 50s.
Yeah, not bad. I was trying to wonder, like, how is he so nervous when this guy's actually won majors before? And I was like, that would make sense when you've got 700 grand on the line. So there's only 4 other players who've won the British Open and the US Seniors Open, and they're Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus and Lee Trevino. So Padraig Harrington joins a pretty exclusive list.
Yeah, he didn't think it was possible to further embellish his reputation, but it is. Right, that is this week's Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
We're going to talk about the Republic of Ireland against Georgia in the World Cup qualifier. Just 1 minute. Here's Vera Pauw talking about how Georgia are apparently now a better team than when we absolutely thrashed them in Dublin last November.
We need to see. We prepare the same way as we did in game plan wise, as we did at the home game. because it's the same type of opponent. They have played 3-0 sorry, against Finland and 4-0 against Sweden in their first game against Sweden. We've been analysing the game of Sweden and what the difference was between the first and the second game, and it looks like they've been really watching our game before they went into their second game. It's a different style of play, and it's a bit similar as we did. So we need to see if we are sharp enough. That will be the key thing. Are we sharp enough within our game plan to be able to score? And they will play their plan, of course, to stop us from scoring and trying to beat us with a break. And they have decent players up front who are fast and can break if we leave space, and we will leave space. So it's not only preparation, it's not only about scoring goals or getting the first goal on the score sheet, but it is equally how to keep them under pressure so that we cannot be beaten with the space that we leave behind us.
Alanna, Cunnane, good morning to you. How are you? Oh, can you hear us, Alanna? We can't hear you. Okay, we'll try and re-establish connection with Alanna. That was Vera Pauw talking about how Georgia are a better team now. No one's really buying that. I guess it's take a little bit of pressure off the Republic of Ireland tonight when we expect to rack up a big score. Alanna, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, how are you?
What kind of a scoreline should we expect tonight? This is brass tacks here from this perspective. Like, what do we need for this to be considered a good performance by Ireland tonight?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I suppose, understandably, Vera Pauw is kind of trying to play things down there and say it's going to be very different from the last time. Now, obviously, there is some differences in that, you know, they have to play in the heat, which they wouldn't be used to. And there's a lot of players Georgia didn't have the last time we played due to COVID kind of situation. But like, in saying that, at the same time, we should still really be racking up a really good scoreline, because we shouldn't just be looking for the 3 points here. We should really be, like, you know, looking to surpass, I think, Finland bet them 3-0 at home. I think that'll be the benchmark. Sweden bet them 15-0 at home. So even this rhetoric of they play a lot better at home, they still do, but they've yet to win a game in the campaign, and at home too. Somebody
who is used to playing in the heat is Denise Sullivan, who obviously plays with North Carolina Courage, where things get pretty hot in the summertime, and she's in excellent form at the moment. So she'll come straight back into the team, will she?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a no-brainer that she'd have to. She's one of our best players alongside Katie McCabe there. Obviously, the two of them with our highest goal tallies for each, their names so far in this campaign. But yeah, she's just a brilliant footballer, and she is so kind of works tirelessly in there. And while she's very technical, she's still able to muscle off a lot of her opponents, which is something we kind of need in our team, because while we have a lot of kind of gifted footballers, we need someone to get that hard work done as well. And she can do both. You know, you saw that, especially that Twitter clip that went viral last week. She had that goal, which was making all the headlines, but there was a lot of intricate play leading up to that, especially even the pass out, like building up to it was something people weren't really talking about, I guess, but definitely deserved to be up there, as well as like some of her merits that she can display, and we'll be hoping she brings that into the game tonight as well.
Well, one of the really striking things about the game last November was just how ruthless Ireland were. Like, they've really got some joy out of tattooing Georgia 11-0, and there was obviously this kind of internal competition between Denise Sullivan and Katie McCabe with regards to getting player of the match, to who would get more goals. Denise ended up with 3 goals in the night, Katie got 2, and like, you wouldn't be surprised if that's the sort of thing that's in the back of their minds going into tonight, where it's like, right, I'm going to outdo you tonight, I'm going to be the one who scores more goals than you tonight.
Definitely, and I think there's that bit of rivalry between them, which is brilliant. It only drives everyone on, and I think like the way where it's being played down, as I was saying there, while that's still a rhetoric, and like, we do still need the 3 points, the goal difference will be so vital to us, because not so much maybe in this group, but if we were to surpass, I know it's even tempting fate even saying that, but if we were to surpass goal difference and results, and how much the margins were between the teams can really come into play. So yeah, if we're to like set ourselves in good stead for the rest of this group stage, and then maybe beyond, we do need to be racking up a great score. And as you say, Katie McCabe and Denise are definitely the ones capable of that. We've other players too, though, I guess, like I expect Heather Payne will come back into the side. I know she played against the Philippines, but I think she'll be playing kind of a higher up role this time around, and then I think Lucy Quinn will start too.
Because I was just about to ask that, because we were having that conversation with Karen Duggan on Friday, with regards to what Ireland do in attack. So it'd be the two of them up front, and I guess the question is regarding the depth in that position. Do you feel that they're guaranteed starters from here on out for Vera Pauw in the Republic of Ireland qualification campaign?
I think so, and I actually tuned into what Karen was saying. I completely agree in the fact that, we are a touch light up the forward line, and while we do have immense talent there, we do just kind of need to bolster the ranks a little bit, because while we have Lucy Quinn and Payne and even Amber Barrett there, we do need to kind of strengthen up elsewhere, because Stephanie Roach came in the other day and played her first game for Ireland since 2017, and while she's been going really well in the Women's National League, which of course is ever increasing in standard, it's just not really to the same level as obviously some of our other players in the WSL and in major leagues around the world. So we do need to kind of continuously strengthen up there. So, but I don't think this would be the game to do that. It will be, not for a start, it will be if we go on to establish a lead. But before that, I think we need to start our best team and kind of see where we go from there.
Kickoff's at 5 o'clock. Victory will move us above Finland in second place in the group. The Swedes obviously are top in the group and are definitely going to win the group. So what do we need in terms of qualification for the rest of the competition? It's a convoluted system, but ideally we're going to end up in a playoff in Australia.
Yeah, so obviously we have Finland and Slovakia to come yet. Finland also have to play ourselves, and then they have to play Sweden too. So they have two tough games there as well. In that regard, I suppose we did ourselves a favour when we bet Sweden, but Slovakia also did us one when they took points off Finland and stopped them getting all 3 points there. They had a draw there before Christmas. So yeah, if we finish above Finland, that'll be the main goal anyways for a start. But after that, it gets quite complicated. There's all 10 of the UEFA groups. The second place go into you have to play two knockout games, and the teams that get through that, the top two go straight through to the World Cup, and then the third place teams go into a playoff down in Australia and New Zealand just before the tournament actually starts.
Yeah, so if we could make it that far,
you're nearly worried about the rest of it then.
Exactly. If you can get to Australia and qualify from that tournament, then you'll have been together for a month qualifying, and you'd like to think that at that stage you're playing like a club team, and who knows what could happen. So a lot rests on tonight and those many goals being scored. Alanna, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us and clarifying all that for us. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Alanna Cunnane there giving us her thoughts on tonight's game. Kick-off is at 5 o'clock Republic of Ireland time, and OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Anthony Moyles is outside. We're talking Gaelic football next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Hurling Pod on OTB Sports.
I call them divils, these Kenny divils, right? I'm not so sure. And if there's any team, truthfully, I mean this hand in heart, any team who can plot and implement and take down Clare at the moment, I do think it's Kenny.
Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Skehill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season. Subscribe to the GA podcast feed on the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match, because somewhere out there there's someone for you, and GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
14 minutes past 8 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you. How are you?
Gentlemen, how are we?
Not much to talk about.
No.
Quiet weekend.
How we're going to fill this slot, to be honest.
You're a bit hoarse. Do you want to tell us about your exploits over the weekend? Embellishing your credentials for the Meath job, I hear.
Oh, Jesus, I don't know about that. No, I'm helping Leo Turley, who's the former Laois star, and my brother are actually aiming out with Kilbride, local team. I went to school in Kilbride Primary School, so they won the league final yesterday.
Right, great.
Yeah. So great win for them, great win for the parish, as they say. So one guy remarked to me, I think it was his 10th final that he was been in for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years, and that's the first one he's won. So,
right.
Good monkey off their back.
Look,
so,
and
hence the hoarseness.
That's why this matters. That's why this whole thing matters.
Torrential rain. Absolutely. Like, it was biblical yesterday. It was actually, like, I mean, I watched the games and how difficult it was to hold the ball, you know, because it just kept coming down. You know, it just makes the game, it makes it extremely tricky. Of course, it changes the games completely as well.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, to be, you know, you can't really see it from the TV. You know, in Croke Park, you just don't get that sense from it. But Jesus, it was, like, I mean, the weather didn't help, or did help, depending on the aspect. But yeah, that was hence my croaky voice.
Yeah,
apologies.
The weather, we haven't talked about that at all. On like the games changed completely between full time and extra time. There was like a downpour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just before extra time in the first game kicked off, there was really bad downpour. Like, I got sunburnt and I almost got pneumonia yesterday. Like, it was one of those days.
Lovely Irish holiday.
Yeah,
that is your typical summer.
And that's the thing. That probably is the most challenging thing about it, is that the players know that it can change mid-game, or it can change from, you know, the Kerry lads walking out into the pitch at half-time of the first game. That pitch is totally different when they go back out onto it for their actual game. You know.
Yeah. No, a complete difference.
How do Galway feel now? Like. And this week, what are their overriding? and they coldly analyse what's going on. What do they think?
Well, they've issues which they need to analyse, and we've highlighted them during the year, which is the issues between the full back line and the goalkeeper, especially with anything at all of height that goes in there
from 40 yards out.
Yeah, like it's the
ball bouncing.
It's such a strange thing. I get the sense that. With the way modern teams set up and all the different tactics and getting players back and I don't know if you do the old in training if there's much concentration on the high ball into the square anymore. You know, there used to be a lot of that. Like, I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of that. There was the whole aspect of, and we've seen it during the year. We saw it Kildare against Dublin, balls coming back off the post, players being lost, you know, cornerbacks, like, where is my corner forward? Next thing, bang, goal. We've seen numerous occasions of it. We've seen numerous occasions, obviously, of not specific goalkeepers being in goal, right? So even the bit of mayhem there is, can I trust him behind me? Because if you see the first one, Comer kind of calls the goalkeeper, kind of as if he's going to let it go, wants him to come get it, and then there's the confusion of it. Now look, it happens. It's a moment that can cause obviously mayhem. But Armagh obviously said to themselves, listen, there's a chink in the armour here. I'm surprised they didn't do it earlier, to be honest with you. I'm surprised they didn't try to throw a few in, even in the first half. And with Donaghy's experience on the sideline, like, he'd be saying, listen, we can work a few of these. He's obviously has loads of armoury where they obviously did them in Kerry, you know, how to get the ball in, when to get the ball in at those opportune times. So, but you could see the absolute pandemonium in the Galway defence when the ball went in. Like, whatever about the first one, then the second one was just just brain farts all over the place. Like, I mean, guys, just the goalkeeper gets it, he should have kicked it into the stand, and instead tries to hand pass it out with a guy with his back to him. It gets spilled, and you know, apart from the equaliser, then I'm thinking to myself and saying, that's Galway done. That's Galway done. And then the row happens, and I'm like, actually, that's not Galway done. That's Galway now in the ascendancy here. Because straight away they're feeling aggrieved. They're feeling, you know, that the justice has gone against them here. So from a situation where they should have been down the dumps, Armagh full of pomp, full of enthusiasm, motivation to come out in the second, then Galway are now kind of looking at themselves, and obviously it switches. I do think they have an issue there, Ger. I do think they need to look at it. Kelly from full back, hopefully he will get back in, but they're not the biggest of a full back line. You know, they're not really dominant in that area. You know, they don't come and claim balls. There is a bit of a hesitancy, and I also think what they do, which is a very, very poor thing, a little bit of, I'm not saying it's fear, but a little bit of hesitancy comes into their game, and a bit of, well, we'll try to manage this out, and they drop back and they allow teams come at them.
Well, we were just talking about this. So in this season alone, there's loads of evidence of them coughing up late scores. Now, against Roscommon, it didn't. We were like, oh, that doesn't matter, but it does matter. It turns out that they adopt a style of play that invites the opposition on, and they're not good enough just yet to be able to do that. They're not Dublin, the 5-in-a-row Dublin team who were able to manage games out. So I don't know. Is the answer just keep pushing on? You have to keep pushing on. So if the character of the team or the personality of a team is that we are a front foot team that likes to pressure the ball, that likes to get the ball, control the ball, and do things that are, because Galway mix it up lovely. You know, I mean, the traditional type of catch, kick, play. You know, lovely forwards, go at it. You know, be on the front foot, be out in front. You'd never look at them and go, oh, they're a controlling team. You'd never put control in the same breath. Say, if you just say top 3 attributes that Galway are, you'd never say, yeah, nice and controlled. You know, they'll grind you down. Galway don't do that. Galway either blitz you or, you know, things could go, the wagon could completely come off for themselves. So I think in those moments where they're trying to control the game, it's completely alien to them. They actually don't know. So what happens is, fear comes into your mindset, and instead of being out in front of a player, you now take a step back. Instead of a guy pushing up, he takes a step back, and we're kind of like, oh no, we're set here, you know, we're in a defensive shape. But all of a sudden there's holes everywhere. And when it's responsibility time, i.e. a high ball, well, I'm actually going to go climb that. It's me calling you, it's your ball, and you're like, and next thing, bang, someone comes in and gets a fist on it, or whatever it is. And there's been iterations of that over the years with teams who try to change their style, which I think is embedded in them for a long time. It's their unique character, you know, and I don't think Galway can do that. And Joyce needs to kind of say, it is difficult. Like when you're 7 points up now with 7 or 8 minutes to go, you're kind of thinking this is in the bag here, lads. We see it out. I was actually going to go out and cut the grass, and I was like, I just better watch this just in case.
Yeah, but as you say, Roscommon, this year, it has happened. I'm sure if you were going back over tape, you would probably have seen that it has happened over the last number of years. So it's there, and it is something that they're going to.
It happened against Mayo, didn't it?
Yeah, like, I mean, to a degree later on, like Mayo had a late rally.
Yes,
flurry of points.
Yeah. So you know, I'm sure they've spoken about it, and of course, it could be the big, massive elephant in the room, and they're kind of going, do we actually kind of really go at this situation? Do we try to find a way around it as a group of players and a management team, or do we deny it and do we kind of say it's not really there and we're okay? I think you're better off grasping it and saying, listen, okay, this is what we're going to do is get around this. And personally, I think the way to do it is that they have to up the work rate even in those 7 or last. Like, I mean, kind of a la Dublin in their pomp, those last 15 minutes Dublin killed you. Like any team that was even neck and neck, the 15 minutes or 12 minutes to go, bang, next thing. And even coming into nearly extra time, you were like, we're actually still on a point or two in this. Next thing you're beaten by 6. And you're kind of going, how did that happen? So they never retreated. They actually, as a matter of fact, went for the jugular completely.
That's the negatives, right? The positives are that a bunch of players who were their kind of second tier of players are now actually genuine first tier players, and that some of their first tier players can improve. Like Shane Walsh gave a very Shane Walsh performance where moments of absolute brilliance, obviously clearly targeted, took a kick to the Achilles in the first half, which, you know, and then kicked the free with the injured ankle. You're like, well, Jesus, that's anyway. So maybe he'll be fully fit the next time, and maybe he won't get targeted as ruthlessly. I mean, of course he will get as ruthlessly targeted in the next game, and it may well be Chrissy McKay who he's playing, who has been the best man marker in the country this year. So I don't know if there's much room for improvement from him, but like, will they get more from their more marquee players? And then are they also very confident about the fact that they've come through the ultimate street fight?
I think if your marquee players are doing just what you said they'll do, i.e. they're a little bit over break even. In other words, they're doing at their high level and they're staying at that. You don't want them having obviously stinkers, but then it is a time, and often in games which have massive importance, such as the games at the weekend, it is the B squad. It's the guys who aren't the household names that pull it out of the bag for you and come and actually take the game by the scruff of the neck. Midfielder's name has slipped my mind. McDade. Like, the goal, if you watch his movement on the goal prior to even getting the ball, he's up around the far forward line. He's kind of sneaking in the back. He's kind of seeing if this breaks down or if I get a ball in the side. So he's already thinking about it. One of the Armagh players goes back and tags him. So he comes back around through the centre. The ball comes over to the left-hand side and then he's gone. And you can see the Armagh number 4 after the goal. See him putting his hands on his head because he just let him go. He just took his eye off for a sec. So he never doubted himself, ever. He said to himself, this is going to come back into me. The finish was top notch, and the score after it was just like, that's a guy who's full of confidence, well able to, because he actually has his hand up for ages going, give me the ball, gets it, only has one thing in his mind, because you're thinking he's going to shift this on. There's 2 Armagh players around him. He goes around, I can't remember the last guy, I think Jamar Hall, sticks it over the bar with the right foot. But what you're looking at is, you're looking at fellas at those moments, Ger, all of those guys have to step up, and they did. Tierney, different guys stood up and said, no, actually, I'll take the mantle on. So I've often, not that I've questioned Galway's steel or their character, but over the last number of years, there has always been, I think, an over-reliance on the three amigos, shall we say, right? The Comer, Conroy and Walsh. And there's always been this thing of, well, if you stop them, you should be in the game. But yesterday...
Or if they're injured, we have an excuse.
Correct. Yeah, there has. And then it was always kind of, we're going to solidify the defence, which Kevin Walsh tried, and then once we get the ball up to the boys, they'll do what they always do. Now, the thing was that if you put an X on one of those...
They were screwed. Yeah.
You pretty much won the game. Now they've fellas who have the ability, obviously the confidence, and they have the desire now to win games for them. So, but their steal yesterday was phenomenal. Now, what do I mean by steal? Well, the sucker punches of the goals, right, and then the equaliser. I don't know how they would have been in extra time if the row didn't happen. I don't know where their mindset would have been. But Armagh, I don't think Armagh helped themselves at all.
How did the initiative back to Galway?
I think so. And I think when Galway went in, as I said, they felt aggrieved. You saw Kelly with the incident. You can imagine the dressing room. They were hopping off each other to get out there and prove a point again. So from a dressing room which would have been like desolation, heads down, it would have looked like just fellas buried all over the place. It now was a dressing room where you can imagine guys were going around hitting each other in the chest saying, we're not going to let this happen today. So their steel, their ability to go, even in that kind of time in the second half where, Armagh looked like they were coming back. I never felt, I thought Galway in full time should have won the game and should have won it well. But there's definitely... it's amazing when you look at that side of the draw, because I think if one or two of those teams had been in the other side of the draw, I think Kerry would have been in trouble from the performance yesterday, and maybe not Dublin as well. Like, I think the two boys should be sitting back saying, thank Jesus for the draw and how it went this year, because, Derry Galway Armagh was just, and no one wants to get Derry at this stage.
No, nobody wants to get Derry. We were saying that both Dublin and Kerry will be cheering Galway on, going, we can deal with that. With Derry, we're just not sure what'll happen.
There's an unbelievable, like, every single player in that Derry team is playing with 100% knowledge of their role, 100% knowledge of their role within the team, and 100% confidence that they can actually change their role, which is so scary. They're not pigeonholed into, I am a cornerback who runs to a certain point and then I hand it off. I am a this who goes there. Every single one of them are doing something different every single game, and you're kind of going, geez, I didn't realise he had that. Like, McInnes comes up yesterday. We saw it in the Ulster Championship, but he gets onto the ball, he shoulders the Clare man out of the way, sticks it in the back of the net, and just watch him. He's straight back, he's organising the defence. They all talk to each other. The communication is unbelievable. There's never any sense of panic in their defence. There's never a sense of panic. There's never that sense of panic that you saw with Galway. There's just unbelievable control. They're so tactically aware. They're so aware of, as I said, their own job and each other's job, that they're so easy to pass players on. You see Conor Glass, no, I'm on this guy, now you come here, you take him, I move over here. So, like, Clare weren't great. Okay, there was a bit of a feel of a kind of a challenge match feel at the start, because Clare just couldn't lay a glove on them. But was that because of Derry's width and speed, or was it just Clare's just weren't at the pitch of it. But they're ruthless. They did a job and they needed to do it. Could they have kicked on and got even more scores? Absolutely.
And the thing is, we'll be accused of overrating their performance against Clare team, who are a Division 2 team, but they've done this against Division 1 teams. They did it against the All-Ireland champions in an Ulster Championship tie. Granted, Tyrone weren't having the best season, but they were able to do exactly the same thing. So I think Derry are real contenders at this point. Michael Casey says, Killian McDaid has been outstanding all year, lads. He's no B player, as you say. He's a big unit and is having a fantastic year. That wasn't the point. We weren't saying he was a B player. We're saying that there's that top tier of Galway footballers who the expectation level is at, but if that next tier come through and start doing what McDaid did, for example, yesterday, then that's a massive surge forward for them, where suddenly he's one of those players. James O'Donoghue has been talking on the football pod about Croke Park players. If he's a Croke Park player, then that's a game changer. And Galway
absolutely.
Galway have two things: flakiness and arrogance, and it's mad that these two things coexist the way they do, kind of split personality. But when the arrogance clicks on, we've seen what you scratch the Galway footballers, and they all believe they're the best footballers in the country. And they have had teams who come and just get to Croke Park and go, yeah, we can kick points from the touchline. We can kick points from the halfway line. We can score the greatest goal that's ever been seen in Croke Park. No big deal.
Well, 01, you go back to the 01 team, they had their marquee, they had, Donnellan, they had those big players, Joyce and Savage, but then they had an unbelievable backup support.
Yeah.
An unbelievable backup support, who went and won those games for them, by the way. Because most teams had enough players to, as I say, put an X on the main guy. So you say, right, just make sure that, Donnellan, I remember in that All-Ireland final, there was a lot of concentration from us of obviously stopping him. But then there's fellas popping up everywhere, so you can't close all the, stop all the gaps. And that's what yesterday showed for me, that they have that ability now. And I think the last number of years, they didn't really have that. Now, it's not that the personnel has changed much, but I think the attitude and the confidence has changed much, that these guys are willing to take it on, willing to take the shots, willing to back themselves. Because some of the scores that they got yesterday, even around that 45 to 60 minute period, they weren't easy scores. They weren't handy scores. They were outside of the right boot. They were on the run. There was lots of Armagh players. They were good scores.
Yeah.
They were scores that Mayo couldn't execute.
Yeah.
That they executed, so as I say, it was all scores under pressure, and that's by the way, that's backing yourself. That's not looking, where's Shane Walsh? Where's Coleman? I have to hand the ball over to him. No, I'm going to do this myself. So that's not a slight at all, as we said on them, but it just means that they're much more equipped. I think in the last couple of years.
Okay, and I haven't asked you this yet. What's the truth about Kerry? Where are Kerry?
I think that they were poor yesterday, weren't they? I think it was a 6 out of 10 performance, and they still won pulling up, which is very, very encouraging. I wouldn't be overly worried about, that performance manifesting itself against Dublin. I think that they will be absolutely on it for Dublin. I think it's this semi-final weekend. This is going to be absolutely fantastic stuff. The toss of a coin really between both of these games, you'd suggest, and I think that's going to be the case for Kerry Dublin. If Conor O'Callaghan doesn't play, though, Kerry win. I think would probably be how the
you don't
forecast
think he is
will be.
going to play?
I think just because we're in such a small season and the recovery time is so short, you'd even have worries about Clifford hobbling off yesterday, making that game. Con didn't even play, so you'd have a greater concern about him potentially making that game. And I think that Dublin absolutely need their forwards on the pitch to try and cause Kerry any sort of problems, because they're just not giving up chances at the moment. And I think that's the most encouraging thing from their perspective. There's also loads of other mini storylines around Kerry yesterday, like David Moran playing 80 minutes, out of nowhere. That was the big talking point beforehand, was no Adrian Spillane, no Jack Barry, middle third is threadbare. All of a sudden, David Moran, you're not going to get 80 minutes out of him, so he's going to be coming off after 50 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's half an hour into the legs of Joe O'Connor, Stefan Cunbar, and David Moran just plays the full game and plays really well, and that's a really important element of it all. And Paul Ganey had a glittering year, actually, despite the fact that late in the league it looked like his place was going to be lost to Tony Brosnan. So I wouldn't be buying the whole, if anybody's playing down Kerry's chances too much on the back of yesterday. They weren't great, but they won pulling up while not being great. Against
a Division 1 team, right? The Dubs beat Cork handy, but I think Kerry beat Mayo handier in a way.
I think when they wanted to just put the foot on the throttle, they did. When they wanted to show that extra class and just step inside and make sure of a score, or potentially look to open them up, they could do it. So it's a strange one. It looked like a challenge game. You know, we're kind of focusing everything and kind of gauging everything against the Armagh Galway game, which is a very hard thing to do because the pitch of that was unbelievable. The excitement, you know, the ferocity of it, the intensity of it.
So the stadium emptied out.
The stadium emptied out. You know, the sound level just went.
Yeah.
You know, and there was the old. You could hear the seagulls going around again, and I was like, oh, here we go. You know, this is just shocking bad. The fare on the pitch didn't help it now, to be honest with you. Because I honestly, I was kind of looking, there wasn't the same intensity levels, there definitely wasn't. I thought it was going to ignite at some stage. There just wasn't. Kerry just managed the situation. I think the Kerry defence was solid again. You know, they didn't, bar the Kevin McLaughlin chance, they didn't really give up a goal opportunity. Again, Morley doing the +1. Very, very solid, really good coming forward. Like, you know, a lot of attacking prowess, obviously, from O'Sullivan and White and the rest of the Buglig. But I thought their forward line was completely all over the place. You know,
the plan was, anyway, that in the first quarter of the game, like just the long direct balls into Clifford repetitively.
You know, and I'm kind of going, like, should he have played Clifford? You know, like, you know, for me, I'm kind of going, if he wasn't 100% right, well, then you're kind of going, no, because it completely takes. And then if you are going to play him, why kick him in these really horrible hanging balls up in the air that a defender can attack and really come through the back of you? You know, well, give him nice little dainty balls out in front that he can get and he can shift them on if he wants or take them on. But I was kind of looking, going, it was nearly like they were trying to prove his fitness. Like it was a really weird thing. And you know, I think they would have had enough for Mayo, and I really think if he's gone for the semi-final, I think it was a bit of a bad judgment error. I think they should have held him back and given him the extra bit of time, because we questioned it last week with Mayo. Ultimately, it came back again to have Mayo, the forwards up front, to kick the scores, and they didn't. As soon as they lost a couple of more lads, you were really struggling. You were going into the depths of the panel, and you can only, like, teams will say, well, it doesn't really matter who gets the scores. Well, it does matter who gets the scores, because if you're attacking from a defence, and the likes of Keegan or Doyle, those guys are coming with the ball on a second wave or a third wave. So in other words, the Kerry defence is already set. It's going to be very, very difficult to get a goal from that situation. Someone in your defence has to make a mistake, or something unbelievably good has to happen. But if you have the forwards up front who can win a ball, turn, quick pass, whatever, take them on, just like the Clifford goal, for example, well, now you're in a different situation. So in other words, it can be quick ball up front and let that forward do his thing. It's not a wave. It's not a kind of a, you know, this is a 1-against-1 situation, or 1-against-2 or 2-against-2, and anything can happen, and there's that sense of danger. And when you look at it, and I'll go back to the Derry situation for a second, Derry did not have to deal with inside forwards at all against Clare. Right, Derry will have to deal with that now against Galway. So Derry kind of changed their style yesterday, and they put much more fellas forwards up the pitch, and they kind of took chances against Clare. I'd say rightly they were probably saying to themselves, we have enough for Clare, so we're going to slightly change things. We're going to put more fellas up front.
In fairness, Rory Gallagher explained in detail that they'd played them a couple of times. They knew that there was going to be issues around midfield for them, so they just pushed everybody up, and there was no point. And Clare were going to play with a man withdrawn, so they would have had a spare man at the back marking nobody. They just pushed him up, and it was game over from the get-go.
Game over, exactly. And they didn't have to worry about Longos in behind. So all they did was, again, they just made sure that everything was there. They didn't have to worry about anything in behind. They will not have that the next day. So that's going to be, again, a different kind of challenge for them, as in how in Croke Park, all of a sudden now the pitch gets a lot bigger. Okay, but going back to Kerry Mayo, I like Paddy Clifford. I haven't seen Paddy Clifford as bad in a long time. Jeez, I was kind of looking for it. You know, I don't think he touched the ball for the first 14 minutes of the game. Like, I was looking, going, where is he? Like, where is he actually on the pitch? And I was saying to myself, okay, he's definitely being tagged by Keegan, but then it wasn't really Keegan was getting on the ball. I thought Moynihan is okay, but he doesn't really, he buzzes around a lot, but he wasn't really doing a whole pile. Gainey was good, you know, and I think he held it. Stephen O'Brien did as usual, but there's definitely something. I was kind of saying to myself, Jesus, Kerry, and is it that, what was it, 12 weeks? Is it that long duration of time where you're just bouncing balls off against each other, and you're trying to find challenge matches, and you're just not at it. You know, you're just not at it, and you could see by them that they just weren't at it. And fortunately for them, I think they're coming in against a team who really just weren't at it either. Now, both of them will raise their game, of course, for each other, but I think they're still blessed that they haven't met one on the other side.
Yeah,
because the other teams, for me, are in fifth gear, full throttle, everyone knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
There's cuts and bruises, there's bandages all over. Whereas the other lads are kind of coming in. It's kind of, I can't remember that Rocky movie, but they're coming in. They're getting massaged. They're kind of taking the old robe off. They're ready to go. Whereas the other lads are half dead, but they're battle hardened.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see when the final happens. If this semi-final between Dublin and Kerry is enough to get the two of them up to the pitch, because whoever wins that game is going to automatically be favourites, just through the weight of history and with everything. But actually, maybe the right thing to do is to come through the battle hardened path. Owen thinks Clifford's out, right? That's what he thinks. He's going to miss the semi-final. Sorry, not Clifford. Con. Owen thinks Con's out. O'Callaghan.
Definitely, the buzzer was going off there again.
Sorry, it's
the Yarra buzzer.
No, he doesn't think Clifford's out. He thinks Clifford's going to play.
Yeah.
He thinks Clifford's going to play, but Con won't. Does that shift the game automatically in Kerry's favour?
I think Con and James McCarthy are two enormous losses. So they're 2 out of your 5 or 6. Like if you're writing down the team tomorrow as Desi Fry, you're normally jotting those 2 guys down, and Fenton and a few others, and you're saying, right, that's my spine. And now there's 2 gone. And I really don't care who I thought Dublin up front looked light. I thought Costello was poor his first game all year where he wasn't great. I think Cork had enough to do man marking jobs on certain fellas. And they put it up to them for a period of time. I think again they were prone to bad frees against Kerry. Remember, fouling very, very stupidly in those just frantic fouls in that kind of D area. And again, they got caught again with that. Being over enthusiastic and like Rock kicked to whatever, 10 frees or 10 points, 9 frees.
Yeah.
So they looked hit and miss, Dublin. They looked, kind of caught between, are we running, are we kicking, are we really intense levels?
This is their All-Ireland quarter-final. This is their performance. This is what they do. They just win the game early. They realise, okay, there's no threats here that we're going to be in any significant danger over the course of the game. We'll just do the percentage thing the whole way through. And so I don't know the truth about them, but those missing players are absolutely key.
They're massive. And I think also the fact of Dublin love goals. I was kind of laughing with Palomine. I was saying they seem to practice their point kicking against Meath, their goal kicking against Kildare, and then a bit of maybe just yesterday was just kind of let's go back with obviously our kick point. But I think they're going to struggle for goals against Kerry. Like they will if the Kerry defence continue to do what they're able to do, and if O'Callaghan is not there, because what O'Callaghan does provide them is he provides them that straight ball, that long ball where he can just go up, cause mayhem, grab it, and bring fellas in. They don't really have that. Dean Rock's not going to necessarily give it that. Costello's not going to get. Costello's buzzing around the edge, looking for those little loopy passes. Paddy Small was okay, but I don't think he's not Con O'Callaghan. Okay, so that fulcrum right there of the get out of jail, the long ball if required, the quick kick out from Comerford, turn, bang, straight ball into it. That's not there anymore, and that's the type of thing that I think you need to do to unlock that Kerry defence. I think once that Kerry defence is set now, a la Derry, they're very, very safe in their own knowledge. They're very, very safe. They know exactly where they're going, and they're not giving up those chances too handy. So I think Dublin will struggle. So it's going to be, what will Kerry get at the far end against the Dublin defence? And I thought Merchant had a tough time against Hurley. I'm not convinced. Cooper did well as that sweeper, but again, it's a Division 2 team.
Yeah.
It hasn't got the prowess, obviously, of the Kerry forwards.
Just on that, there was definitely a couple of moments in the second half of the Mayo game yesterday where you're like, where's Morley? He was excellent yesterday, but there is a possibility that Dublin can drag him out of position. I think there was just a couple of occasions yesterday where it looked like Mayo had achieved that. And also, we talk about goalkeepers under the high ball. Like Shane Ryan under the high ball has been something that's given Kerry fans very, very big palpitations because of his temptation to punch the ball rather than catch the ball, and that's a recurring habit that happens. So Con is doubly important on that front, given the direct option he gives. I'd put it to you, is Con O'Callaghan more important to Dublin than David Clifford is to Kerry?
He possibly is. I think that's it's the importance of that question or otherwise goes missing because of the hype around Clifford, and also that O'Callaghan has been a cog in the wheel of this superpower over the last number of years. But I think when you remove him out, I think they become a much lesser team. than when he's in. Now that's a very obvious, but he gives you everything that they don't. Like if you look over the last number of years, when they have needed that powerhouse and that option of a goal, just someone who's just going to get a goal. He's just going to get the ball. He's going to go right at you. He's going to fire you away, and he's going to stick it in the back of the net because he doesn't go for handy points. He doesn't tip them over the bar. His ruthlessness in there and his directness and everything about him, his strength and just gives you everything. And you can see Kilkenny then doesn't have to do that, if you get me. You know, Kilkenny and the rest of them, they can kind of go, he'll look after that, we can do our thing. But I think when he's missing, someone else has to step up, and they do have to slightly change, you know, to accommodate other kind of styles. So he quite possibly is on. But like, it definitely, it's you know, whether both of them start or both of them don't start, whoever, if Con is gone, it's you would have to think that it's advantage Kerry for me.
Yeah, hard to disagree with that.
Kerry are slight favourites with the bookmakers, and Derry are slight favourites with the bookmakers as things stand. So we're headed for a Kerry-Derry All-Ireland final, according to the bookies.
Yeah, like I mean, I still think Derry have done an amazing job. Gallagher will do well now to bring them down after this game. You know, I heard McGuigan being interviewed after, and he was kind of saying, people were kind of saying stuff about their forward unit. I don't know who was saying that, but anyway, he was kind of saying.
Darragh Shea was saying, wasn't he? That they wouldn't be able to win like this. There was definitely
was there?
There was definitely talk out there that Derry.
Yeah.
I think did Spillane not have a go? That this is terrible football. The usual.
Yeah, the usual. So yeah. So everyone plays with 14 men behind the ball. But anyway, you know. But that's we know that argument. But so I don't think anyone, but certainly we never questioned their forward prowess. They have enough to really hurt you. But it is a different game for them. I don't think they have come across, because look at the games they've played. Right. So they've played obviously an awful lot of Ulster teams. They haven't met a team yesterday or thus far who have that forward capability as Galway, who have the guys who can kick points, who have the opportunity to go early, go hard, who have the guys who will stay inside. They'll play 2 to 3 up, and they'll say, right, we're going to. Now, do they have the backs? But it takes it completely. Does Rodgers end up going back in full back properly? So does he go in there beside Chrissy McCaig? Absolutely. But now they're going to do defending. Now they can do it, but they're not just like, look at Donegal. Once McCaig put a kind of an X on McBurty, they were kind of saying, we're set here. You know, even when Murphy came in, Rodgers picked up Murphy. There wasn't a whole pile. Galway are different ones now. You know, you're putting fires out all over the place. That half back line that they have are going to do a lot less going forward. They're going to do more stuff going back towards their own goal. So it's a different proposition for them.
We unusually on the show haven't spent all our time talking about Mayo with you. Is that Mayo team finished? Is that the end of the road for this? Like I'm saying, that golden generation. There was the bang of that England getting hammered by Germany when they couldn't quite work out how to make Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard play together, and they never did, and that was the end. And this felt like an end, like a full stop.
It's funny, you know, we spoke about the atmosphere of the game earlier on. You know, I wasn't at the game, but I just even just watching the body language of the players after it looks like it was. It's funny, you know, you can sometimes in a team, you know, there's just a kind of a natural end to it. You know, I think Horan even has probably, if he was being really honest, which he obviously will be over the next while, I think he'd say to himself, I've it's a new voice. I've done it as much as I can. I think they were always struggling a bit this year. You know, they were always kind of, there was injuries, there was different stuff, and that's all fine. But I just don't think the energy was in the team. They did not seem to be the same type of a unit. As I said, after the game, I could see a lot of abject faces. There was no one really. It was kind of like, yeah, okay, it's about time someone just put a bullet in us. I got that sense.
There was a moment in the second half where Cillian O'Connor was trying to score a point, and it was like leaking off horribly to the left, and Diarmid runs as fast as he can to try and get it in. And last year in the All-Ireland semi-final, he made that incredible thing that got the whole crowd, he's got the ball in.
Yeah.
Couldn't keep it in this year. It was just like they didn't have the same sense of mission or whatever about the team this year that they had last year, and that might just be an All-Ireland final defeat hangover, where you realise that, like, if the penalty goes the other side of the post, we're the ones who get that little bit of dander up and away we go. I don't know, it's like, it's hard for anybody to come back from an All-Ireland defeat like that.
I think it is, and I think, you know, there's a lot of fellas with mileage on the clock there. You know, you look at McLaughlin, O'Shea, Keegan, there's fellas with big miles on the clock over the last kind of 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I think you know, it's probably time for a new breed, and I mean that in every sense, both player-wise, management-wise. I think it's time for some new ideas. I think there's probably rumblings. I think they feel that, you know, there's a change required, as in the style of play that they have. I don't necessarily agree with that, but what I just feel is that it is. You could sense from it that they kind of once the shots started to go awry, there was no, if you look at even some of the scores that they missed, it was all very individual stuff. You know, there was no kind of real sense of interplay. There was no kind of real sense of a team here really striving for, and there was no even kind of like, come on, like, I mean, fellas going over and trying to G each other, but it was like, oh, another wide. You know, it was just, there was a total feeling of inevitability. And there shouldn't have been, by the way, because they had enough chances in that second half. They had more than enough of the ball. They had more than enough chances. But there just was. Can
you fix that, though? Can you fix it? Because it doesn't, like, we've been watching Mayo kick wides all our lives.
Yeah. Can you fix it? Yes, you can fix it. But, you know, and this is not an excuse, but you have to get the forwards on the field who can kick. Like, there's not, again, if you're sitting down there and you're the Kerry management or whoever it is, and you're looking at the 6 forwards who start, you're kind of saying, right, once we take this one out, are we going to see the scores coming from elsewhere? You know, we might get a couple chipped in here, there, but you're kind of saying, yeah, we're happy enough here. And to have, I go back to what we discussed a couple of weeks ago, to have, when you have 6 or 8 players back like Kerry have, you need fellas who are going to take risks. You need fellas who are going to run hard, do something, but then also have the ability to score. And Kerry were quite happy to have them out there, taking their shots.
Because they weren't going to kick 22 points to beat them.
Absolutely not.
So Andy Moran's had a brilliant introductory to his first year in inter-county management. Is he the natural successor, and does it happen now? Is it too soon? Or, like, because he might be able to come in and convince those lads who are the old soldiers to go one more time, but also use them as subs, and suddenly you've depth.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, absolutely. You know, is it that he's too close to those guys over the last year, you know, and relationships, and it's a hard thing to do. You know, you're going in and maybe you're dropping your buddy, you know, so, like, I mean, you need fellas who are going to buy into all that, and all of those guys would have to say, yeah, I've no problem sitting on the bench for 65 minutes every match and coming on for the last 5 or 10.
They might do it for him in a way they wouldn't do it for somebody else.
They might, absolutely. And do those guys still have it in the tank? Absolutely. They take a break now, they could come back and get reinvigorated. I'm not so sure about what's coming through. There wasn't anything really standing out at me. I think a lot of people have bemoaned the forwards, but I haven't really seen a massive amount. The defence has been solid, but they're still very reliant on the likes of Keegan, you know, to come up. And even yesterday, you know, he took a few shots at the outside of the boot. Sometimes they go over and all of a sudden the crowd, in a couple of few, just don't go.
Yeah.
They look great when they do, and when they don't, it's kind of like it just peters out, you know. And that's the whole, I think the whole performance and their whole year was just, it was kind of like, it was symbolic of that. It just petered out. And I think then James's reign, like, you know, like, James is not a very kind of he's not an excitable type of fella. In other words, he's very measured, you know, and he'd be measured when he wins and he's measured when he loses. But I think if he probably sits back, he says to himself, you know what, I'm probably there. It was a hard, because I can imagine the year they've had when you have different knocks coming at you. And Mayo people, and they're down there, and there's a lot of stuff going on about finances and everything else. We won't even go there, but there's a lot of darts being thrown. And I'd say he looked even tired to me yesterday. He looked like a fella who's just saying, you know, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, I can see. I think he's been brilliant for Mayo. I think he was in charge for the team that put it up to Dublin, who were the greatest team of all time. We have to give them credit for that. So if he decides to go, he'll be a big loss. But there is, for the first time, I think, a live candidate to come in and go and invigorate everybody and get that crowd back, you know, because it seemed like for whatever reason there was just a bit of a disconnect between them. Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million.
No bother, lads.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is 8:53. Now, Golf Weekly is heading to Cunnane Castle on Tuesday, July the 5th. We've got a brilliant day lined up. Peter Lorry Golf Clinic, live podcast recording, food prizes, and of course a round of golf at the brilliant Cunnane Castle. Golf Weekly Golf Days are exclusive events for friends of the pod. So what are you waiting for? Sign up now at otbsports.com/Golf Weekly. Here's Andy Farrell admitting he's not overconfident after Ireland's recent success over New Zealand.
Does coming here after last year's win give you a bit more confidence, I guess?
I won't say confidence because every time you take up you put the Irish shirt on, there's always an element of nerves and hope we can perform and be as good as we were with them. But in reality, the boys know that that's not going to be good enough this time round neither. We know what we're coming up against. We know that it's a different kettle of fish. Eden Park first up. We know how special that place is to the All Blacks, etc. So it's great for us, though. It's great, we want to see ourselves under extreme pressure and how we deal with that. So therefore, it's good all round.
Last time the Irish toured New Zealand, I think, was in 2012. Probably a lot of your players were probably still in school then. What does that, how does that make you feel touring with, such a young, fresh side who haven't come here before?
Well, there's some people that were involved there, so there's a few scars from that tour as well, but we're lucky enough that there's a few guys that came here with the Lions in 2017, but I think that tells the story of the challenge ahead as well. I think, I think the moral of the story back home after the Lions series draw was one of success, and that was the best of the best. Touring these shows, so you can see what type of task it is for little old Ireland, so but having said that, challenges are there to make us better, make us stronger, and we've got to be ready to meet those head on.
Right, it's 8:55. Alan Quinlan, good morning, good night, good evening to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. I'm not there yet, Ger. Not till tomorrow morning, so I'm still in Ireland at the moment.
Right, very good. Well, the breaking news overnight is that it's going to be Ireland against Joe Schmidt this weekend because COVID has ripped through the coaching ticket of New Zealand and Joe Schmidt has been seconded in. I mean, he just happened to be around and ready to go. This is, for some Irish rugby fans, this is stuff of nightmares. It's like, oh, God, he knows exactly what we're going to do.
Incredible. It's incredible, isn't it? Joe wasn't supposed to come in and get involved with the All Blacks until after the tour, and now he's in there this week because of COVID. Ian Foster, I think their defence coach, John Plumtree, is gone as well. A couple of players, Havili and Jack Goodhue as well. So, it's kind of crazy and ironic, isn't it? I think Joe was supposed to come back to Ireland for a short break during the first and second test and be back out there for the third test. But now he's, I don't know what his plans are now, but having him back involved this week makes it a little bit more tricky and certainly makes it more interesting, doesn't it?
Well, it's really tasty for the New Zealanders because that coaching ticket was under pressure after what Ireland and France in particular did to them last November. So there was a possibility that if the tour went tits up, that Schmidt would have been the coach for the World Cup. Now, obviously, this coaching ticket might well survive because Joe Schmidt comes in and saves them.
Yeah, it's crazy, really, isn't it? But I suppose certainly by All Black standards, the last couple of years haven't been kind of at the heights we're used to with them. Usually, if they lose a match or two, they get back on track pretty quickly. But I think there's been a big transition the last number of years, even though we'll see the likes of Retallick, Whitelock, Sevilla, Bowden Barrett, all these players who are not youngsters anymore, still heavily involved with the All Blacks. But there's certainly a little bit of a frustration and probably a pressure on Ian Foster and his coaching team going forward. So it'll be interesting. The reality is, and I was thinking about this myself, that they're going to be pretty angry, pretty aggressive against Ireland and pretty determined to not give Ireland a sniff in these three tests. So there's huge pressure all around, and it's going to be big. There's kind of added spice to this, really, because of Ireland's success against the All Blacks in recent years. So now we have Joe Schmidt involved. So it makes it really interesting, doesn't it?
Does Schmidt want to become full-time head coach of the All Blacks one day?
I don't know. I think he's obviously been back in New Zealand for a couple of years now for family reasons and involved with the Blues. And I'm sure, look, it's his home country, it's his home team, and probably the biggest, most exciting kind of coaching job in world rugby. You're your percentage of win rate is usually very, very high on. And I would imagine, it's a job that he would love to have at some stage. But and he was being touted a couple of years ago when he was leaving Ireland, probably before the World Cup, as getting the job. They appointed, and they usually appoint within, don't they? That's why Ian Foster kind of stepped up. And but he is under a bit of pressure, and I think it's a little bit unfair in the sense that there has been a fair bit of change, and a lot of top players have moved on, and that transition has happened the last couple of years. But I can't speak for Joe and say he wants the top job, but obviously he's back in New Zealand, and he's going to be heavily linked with us. As is Scott Robertson, given the success he's had with the Crusaders. I think he's made no secret of the fact that he would like to be All Blacks coach someday as well. So it just makes it a really interesting week with Joe Schmidt now involved, coaching against players that a lot of them who he really kind of instilled a confidence and a belief and had great success with.
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones territory in New Zealand at the moment with everything that's going on. So it was Roy O'Connor on Twitter, the Irish Independent. So Schmidt is part of the All Blacks coaching team. We don't know exactly the role, but Ian Foster, he's down with COVID. John Plumtree is down with COVID, and he also says Scott McLeod, another All Blacks assistant, also tested positive for COVID, leaving just Greg Feek and Brad Moore still standing from the original coaching team. So maybe Joe just goes in and automatically is head coach because that's the role that he's used to doing. He's worked with Greg Feek in the past, and maybe it'll be him in the box making the calls down to to knife us gently in the belly at the weekend.
What I've read myself is that he's going to go in and take the training on Tuesday and Thursday. Whether Ian Foster will be back in the coach's box. We don't know exactly when he tested positive. Was it last Thursday or Friday? Was it last week? Would they get back in the coaching box? But I'd imagine if Joe's going to be involved in the training during the week, that he's going to be probably involved in the match day stuff as well. I think that's the way they'd probably have to plan it.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. What was already an interesting tour has suddenly ratcheted up a significant degree. Also news coming through from Roy O'Connor, Herring and Henderson are injured. Niall Scannell has been called up. Mac Hansen has COVID. He's isolating, so fingers crossed no more COVID in the Ireland camp. That will probably take him out of selection, which means that maybe we're going to see Balakoon. The Maori team has been named overnight as well. TJ Perenara is on the bench. Again, this is coming from Cian Tracy, the Irish Independent. He's saying that Perenara is a joint captain, and Brad Webber, who is co-captain, is going to start at scrum half. He's a 17-time All Black, so no slouch either. This is going to be very, very interesting. Where we start losing some players to COVID, we're down in New Zealand, can't really call up replacements. The squad gets thin. And suddenly it's like,
Andy Farrell at number 8.
Yeah, it's a challenge for them, isn't it? And they're probably, where we were a number of months ago when they started opening things up, and COVID still being pretty present. And that's the difficulty. I'm not sure what the Ian Henderson injury is or the Rob Herring one, but obviously Rob Herring is, you're down to two. You're down to two hookers if Herring isn't available for Wednesday's Maori game, and then you're in a risky situation. Sorry, lads, I lost you for a sec.
Yeah, no worries. No, the update came through. There's no specific. It's not like that they've been sent home. Henderson and Herring both picked up knocks in training on Saturday and will be scanned today, Monday, in Auckland. Niall Scannell has been added to the squad to provide additional cover at hooker. He will arrive in New Zealand on Tuesday morning. And Mac Hansen tested positive for COVID and has been isolated from the rest of the squad. We're going to have a team named overnight. So this time tomorrow we'll know the team for the Maori game.
Yeah, it's and I suppose it's some guys, Ger, are going to have to double up this week, which makes it pretty difficult. I think if you traditionally, for some players here, I suppose some guys would have done it on a Lions tour, but the likes of probably Conor Murray, maybe Keith Earls, Rob Herring, if he was on the bench, would have had to double up. Then Sheahan could be involved now. So it's tricky for the players who are probably going to double up, and they may be sitting on the bench twice this week, if that makes sense. I would have had Ty Byrne probably involved in the Murray game to get him some game time, not starting for the All Black test on Saturday, because I suppose I thought Henderson and James Ryan maybe were the two that, you know, played a number of matches towards the end of the season, would have been match fit, and it would have been brilliant to have Ty Byrne coming off the bench. You know, he may have to start now. Maybe Joe McCarthy might come into the picture if Henderson is not able to train during the week, but certainly when a player is going for a scan, you'd worry, and there's a little bit of concern there. I hope he's all right, but it's not ideal, because if he's going for a scan, he's probably not going to train this week. But you know, the rest of the players that are kind of travelling out, and you know, we get probably a team for the Murray match pretty soon. You'd imagine this 95% of the starting team won't be involved on Saturday. And that's why they're brought out there. That's why he's brought an extended squad, but some players are going to have to double up, and that's probably going to be on the bench.
Yeah, sorry, of course, I mentioned Balcon. He's injured, obviously, he did his hip while I was on holidays and missed that. So what are you hoping for from the players who do have to double up? Like, that no one will start the game at the weekend for the tests who has played significant minutes, or do you want some game time at all during the week to sharpen you up?
No, I think the team I've kind of picked is, you know, you brought Jeremy Loughman out there, so there's no point in starting Cian Healy at loosehead and then having him on the bench and having an issue there. I think Jeremy Loughman did, you know, what happens at hooker now, Ger, because of Rob Herring. Dave Heffernan, I think, would still start against the Maoris, but Dan Sheahan, it's going to be very difficult for Niall Scannell to go straight on the bench for the Murray game if he's only in Tuesday. Maybe he will. Tom O'Toole, Ryan Baird, Joe McCarthy, Cian Prendergast, Nick Timoney, Gavin Coombs. That's the forward pack that I would start. And really, you want to try and find out a little bit about the character of these guys in a really kind of hostile environment. It's kind of a little bit unknown, you know, all these players who are going to play for the Maoris, the New Zealand team, they've all been pretty good in Super Rugby. They've 10 debutants. So there's a little bit unknown about how good they'll be and how well they'll gel together. So we can't really predict this game or kind of know what's exactly going to happen. But, you know, if they're allowed to play the Maoris and get time and space, you know, they can be devastating. But it's a real kind of test for the players. Craig Casey has started 9. Harry Byrne or Kieran Frawley. It depends what Andy Farrell and Mike Hatt see Kieran Frawley's role in this tour. Is he ahead of Harry Byrne now? You know, if you bring Harry Byrne, maybe you start him and throw him in there on Wednesday. You know, Bundy Aki is kind of an interesting one. I saw some journalists kind of saying that maybe he'll start against the Maori and, you know, he won't be starting or on the bench for the Ireland test, which would be difficult because Robbie Henshaw and himself are kind of going head to head for that 12 jersey. Maybe they'll end up playing together in the test. Who knows? James Hume as well at 13, and Jordan Larmour, Michael Lowry. They're kind of the players that, the obvious kind of choices that will start that Maori game. And then you're going to have some guys, as I said, on the bench doubling up, it's a tough week for them. They may only play 2 20-minute clips and end up with 40 minutes this week, but just mentally preparing for a game on Wednesday, then probably trying to recover and switch back into a test match situation on Saturday. But that's the nature of touring.
And also probably the nature of what they want to achieve before the World Cup next year. And Andy Farrell did say that he wants 40 players capable of playing World Cup knockout rugby next year. This is, like everybody said it's like one of the most challenging tours Ireland are ever going to go on. And when you throw that Maori situation into the mix to kick things off, like there is going to be a lot of hard questions asked with what this Irish team has to go through over the next little while.
There is, yeah. And I think, you know, thinking about it all, we're a year out from the World Cup, and I think obviously what happened the last time we were in 2018, a year out from before 19 World Cup in Japan, the Irish team was in brilliant form. It was all positive. So those kind of questions under pressure, and they might be little moments in the game where you are under severe pressure and you just got to hold on for dear life defensively, steal the line out, win a big scrum, make a big tackle, something like that. Those kind of moments that can really enhance a player's self-confidence, self-belief, and make them feel that they're ready to really challenge for the starting jersey. So it is about creating depth. And, Wednesday night in Hamilton is going to be fairly hostile, and there's so much tradition with the Maori jersey and the history of all that. It was interesting to have Rua Tapoki in with them last week, just talking about the culture and what it means to play for the Maoris. But look, I think they'll be skillful enough, and probably a lot of these young players will be pretty confident and want to lay down a marker, but they've got to play as a unit and play as a team. And a lot of the players who are going to play have been in really good form.
There's a world in which we lose all 5 games, isn't there? Like, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility here. The experimental Maori side, or the inexperienced Maori side as opposed to experimental, maybe suggests Ireland should be favourites for that game. But it's hard to know until we see what Ireland team is named. There is a world in which we lose all 5 games and it's not a disaster. There's a world in which we lose all 5 games and it's a complete disaster.
Correct. Lose all 5 games and you're competitive and you're close in those games, and really, scoring tries and getting moments in those games, as I spoke about. And it's not the end of the world, because I'd rather kind of find things out now, and I'm sure Andy Farrell would say that he'll want to win these matches, but and learn from some experiences and be able to look back when you do the analysis, say, well, a certain, defensive lapse here, or, a scrum issue, or someone switching off here has cost us a game, or a bit of discipline or something like that, a couple of penalties. But if you're in a situation, and that's what I say, you don't know what way these Maori All Blacks will kind of gel together. They're obviously very, very talented players. They've played 18 weeks of Super Rugby, so they're right slap bang in the middle of their season. They'll all be pretty match fit and match sharp. And you'll have some X Factor players in there who will be really kind of trying to push on to the All Blacks as well, because they have a big summer ahead. So it's a big challenge, but I'd be confident. I'm really keen to see how they cope with just being in New Zealand, that whole culture there, and the obsession with rugby. And it's a brilliant place to tour. I've been there a number of times. It's a fantastic place. The people there are brilliant. They love their rugby and they appreciate good rugby. So, I hope, and hopefully a lot of these players who get an opportunity on Wednesday night really step up to the plate. All
right. Well, Alan, safe flight tomorrow. Thanks a million for joining us today. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
It's Alan Quinlan about to head off for the adventure down under. What do you think? How many games are we going to win?
Let's go for a win in one of the Maori games.
So 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5, yeah. I think the test is going to be very, very challenging, and I think that the All Blacks are angry now. I think that the Schmidt thing adds to it rather than takes away.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Obviously from a spectacle point, but I think it might actually add to the All Blacks. I think they'd probably be possibly stronger with this, even though it's because of a huge disruption to their culture.
What if he wins? Does he get the job?
I was thinking that, it's like, if he wins 3 tests, all of a sudden is Ian Foster
you got to presume Foster's COVID's going to be grand by the weekend, but like
the All Blacks should stop picking up Ian Foster's calls. He's just locked out of the training ground. It's like what was it when Mark Lawrenson leaves in one of his managerial posts, he tries to get into the pub and the pub is locked and he has to keep walking down the street. Ian Foster trying to get back into the All Blacks training ground after Schmidt masterminds a 3-test win.
Well, certainly we'll be talking about it all on OTB AM, and of course on Off the Ball on News Talk every day pretty much between now and the end of the tour. A reminder, we're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. Paul McGrath on the Charlton era is OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Splunk Sport at 3. Our Classic Games Club is Dublin versus Kerry in 2001. See, it all makes sense again. Live commentary of the Republic of Ireland against Georgia from 6. That's actually 5 p.m. Sorry, that kick-off is at 5 p.m. With Nathan and Ruth Fahey on duty for that one. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the very latest and best sports content and podcast analysis. Now, after these, we've got Armagh's Aaron Kernan to review yesterday's All-Ireland quarter-final.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
It's very difficult for Manchester United to stop that. What do you want them to do? Come out and deny every single link? With 22 links to different players on one day last week alone.
These five-a-sides are happening because he organises them. And he says he's not playing. I'm concerned because he's so good. Like, Sheahan is the man. If you ask anybody who's played with him, they'd say exactly the same. So even though he hasn't got the sort of games on the board, he's still one of the best players people have ever seen.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, 14 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. I'm delighted to say Aaron Kernan is with us. Aaron, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger.
Did the Brawl help or hinder Armagh, do you think?
To be honest, I'm not really sure it had much of an effect on them. I don't think it changed the outcome of the game the way I probably imagined it would have. I suppose the nature of how chaotic the game had got towards the end of normal time, it didn't seem to knock either side off their stride. Yes, there were mistakes and there was people going down with cramp, and decision making was always going to be different. But no, in terms of what actually happened, I think both teams spent enough time refocusing and going out and making sure that they did what they had to do to finish out the game and get the win. And fortunately, for Galway, they just managed to have a bit more composure whenever it comes to the penalties then.
It did seem as if Galway recovered composure in extra time in a way that the last 10 minutes or last 8 minutes of the added time at the end of normal time, that their composure had deserted them. I don't know, maybe they got a bit of righteous indignation or something in the changing room from it. It just felt like a little bit... Galway somehow managed to recover from a situation where it looked like they were in rag order.
They did, and I would have felt that Armagh definitely were the team in the ascendancy. Like, realistically, Galway had the game won and won well. Like 6 points up with a couple of minutes to go. You expect to see that out. But in fairness to our boys, you know, they stuck at it. You could say maybe some of the goals were fortuitous, but we put the ball into the danger area and we had the right men in the right place, and it made for an absolutely grandstand finish. And I know obviously the past few years have been difficult on everybody, but I suppose from an Armagh perspective, it's a long time since we've been that close and that competitive in an All-Ireland quarter-final, the business end of the season. And I think our supporters really got involved and made it an unbelievable occasion, and it carried on for practically another hour after that between the extra time and the penalties.
What's the standing of the management team at the moment? Because it like, this does not feel like it's a team that has finished. It doesn't feel like it's a team that's reaching the end of a road. It feels like we're, you know, I think, like, you know, the last couple of years, as you say, we would have seen a performance like this from Armagh through the back door if there had been a back door during the COVID championship, and we would have got to this point a little bit earlier, certainly in terms of the rest of the country paying attention to what was happening, because we saw the quality of the football they played in the league this year. So I presume no one's clamouring for a change, and that actually everybody feels like you're in the middle of something here as opposed to towards the end of it.
Yeah, like that wouldn't even be coming into the equation after yesterday evening. I would have to say I would fully expect the management team to stay on. And you know, I suppose if you just look at it, again, we're not the excuses. Genuinely, I felt Galway probably were the better team. We just showed grit to stick in it whenever Duckler was going away from us. But we're missing a few key players as well there yesterday. Just out through injury, where maybe the likes of Derry at the moment who've made the breakthrough, they're quite fortunate where they've a full hand to pick from. So definitely there are a few key faces who will come back into the mix next year that will make us even stronger in terms of, they'll definitely be starters, or even they'll bolster your bench through the options that we would have. Like, we had two boys coming on yesterday, Justin Kernan, they could get a couple of minutes against Donegal. and Owen Woods from Carrick had never played for us at senior level. So they were boys you were bringing on at the end of normal time that have no real experience at this level. So our bench, well, their experience and what they gained yesterday, they'll be better for it. But definitely there are other key personnel, another 4 or 5 players that will make us a better group for next year, and I would fully expect that management team to be the ones to lead them.
It's interesting you talk about feeling like Galway were actually the better team, because that seems to be a consensus that's building. But in the first 15-20 minutes, it didn't look like they were the better team, and it felt almost as if the game is there for Armagh. If there's just a little bit more self-belief, or I don't know, is it experience? Because like the gap between the two teams was, there was no gap at the end of extra time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there actually elements that Armagh are going to be looking back on that going, Jesus, that was right there for us if we just did X, Y and Z?
No, apologies. You're right in terms of the first 20 minutes. I thought we completely controlled the game. I thought we had a better team. I thought we looked like we'd settle really well. I think a big one that we will look back at regrets is the 2 goal opportunities that we actually created, that we worked on, which was Ger Eoin's, where he breaks through and fists the ball over the bar. And then the other one was where Rian O'Neill hits a superb pass. Everything he's going to shoot into the hill, hits a nice wee diagonal ball into Aidan Nugent. Greg McCabe comes straight off Aidan's right shoulder heading towards goal, but Aidan turned thinking he was going to get shot off himself, and they end up getting blocked. And out of those 2 attempts, we got 1 point. And I think if you just look at the day before, for me, it's a mentality thing where Derry are clearly looking for goals. It's something that they're clearly speaking about and something that they're clearly working on in training. They have a ruthless streak in them. Once they get, even if it's a half a sniff, they're going for goal. They don't care. And I think that's one aspect that Armagh in particular will look back with regret. But it's an area that obviously you can work on and you can identify. But as for yesterday, it was an area that I think at that stage that you were speaking about, first 15-20 minutes, if Jarlio goes for goal and Nick goes in, I would have thought that we definitely would have had complete control of the game, because at that stage, Galway were still finding their feet, where we looked like we were really settled and assured. And then obviously they reeled us in, and you go in half time, a draw game, where we basically had control of it for the vast majority.
So what changed then? What allowed Galway to reel Armagh in?
I thought that I was in the Cunnane, so I thought their forward shape, they looked a bit confused about where they all were going to play, and I'm talking about in particular the danger men, Comer, Finnerty, Walsh. They never really looked like they were getting in threatening positions. They never looked like they were available for a nice wee pop inside pass, like the ones I'm speaking about that Rian O'Neill given to Aidan Nugent for the goal chance, or there was another one into Aidan Nugent. He literally just led out from basically the end line straight in front of goal, wins it into 14, pops it off a shoulder to Rian O'Neill, taps it over the bar. Simple scores Armagh were getting. But Galway then started to have more men ahead of the ball, so that they were winning possession in the inside forward line. And then coming on the loop, Matthew Tierney had a super one off his left foot. Rob Finnerty had a cracking one coming in off the Hogan stand off his left foot. So it was I don't know whether they were overthinking it in terms of, trying to take Armagh players into different positions, or whether they just got a bit knocked back by Armagh's intensity. But once they got settled into the game, I felt that at all times they had their danger men in the right areas. So it was particularly Comer and Finnerty. I thought Walsh was really well marshalled throughout the whole game. But yeah, their forward shape in particular changed, and defensively they were very standoffish. I don't know whether they're afraid of giving away a free or committing to a tackle and getting skipped by. But they were quite passive early on, and they fairly got the grips with their boys. They had pressure on the man on the ball, and then they always had a second man who was coming in to double up, which basically slowed Armagh's play and made the next pass go backwards, and then we had to come forward again and go with it. And obviously we're much better set up. So all in all, in fairness, you have to give them credit. They adapted to the game, whether it was managerial tweaks or instructions or the players themselves. They definitely showed good composure to keep themselves in a game whenever it looked like it was going away from them.
And that's like the really optimistic thing for Galway going into the semi-final, is that they would have been put through the ringer yesterday, but that is such a huge amount of credit to have in the bank going into that semi-final. And specifically, as you say, to be able to figure out that defensive system that Armagh employed yesterday, and to know that their management can get it right in game, or that their players can figure it out themselves in game, is a hugely encouraging thing before that Derry match.
Absolutely, and to be fair, everyone would have had their question marks over Galway more from a mental perspective whenever games were going against them, obviously not in terms of the skill attributes that they have. So like they will take, well, they would have been really disappointed at the time to throw away a 6-point lead late on. I think whenever Bora Joyce sits back, himself and his management team, it's the character that they showed in the first half, it's the character that they showed to come out in extra time or penalties. Like you can't quantify that. Joyce could take them out to Lockgeorge, the training centre, as often as he wants, and try and convince them that, you know, we're good enough and this is our year and why wait for another year. But what they actually did yesterday, he has genuinely something to work with them in terms of what he would have seen, and I suppose the pride that he would have had in them, that they were able to see out difficult situations, keep their calmness and composure. And I suppose it was all over the field. I just thought that they had an assurance about them. Kieran Malloy in particular, to me, in that 15 minutes before half-time, I thought he looked really, really good on the ball himself, and they himself obviously have huge, I suppose, a huge winning mentality whenever it comes to Croke Park, because of what they've done off the back of their Corofin exploits, and like they would have no inferiority complex to anybody. But those boys in particular got on a huge amount of ball, were very composed and very calm, and just seeing out a difficult time for them. And like I said, then they were able to come in at half-time, draw and momentum starting to really build with them. So all in all, they'll be absolutely delighted with what they would have got out of yesterday in terms of the mental, I suppose, baggage that they might have had. I think I heard one of the stats that they'd only won maybe one game in Croke Park in this past 13 or 14 years, which is incredible to think whenever you give the quality of players that they have. So to win a game in that fashion, you know, it wasn't a game where it went and won easy, to have to absolutely go to the penny or collar and be asked every question possible and more and still answer them, it's a terrific way to go into a semi-final.
How do you stop Derry then?
That's a difficult one. It'll be a different prospect to Armagh, because while I felt yesterday was going to go the way that it did pan out, because I thought both teams have definitely improved. Like always improved defensively and how they were even from the league final this year. Armagh massively improved from what they were against Monaghan last year in terms of the amount of goals they conceded. But I knew they would still keep enough men ahead of the ball that they could play direct styles, and they would rack up big scores. Derry obviously kill you on a counter-attack. You just simply can't carry the ball into traffic to get turnovers, and you can't kick it away needlessly. But to be fair to Galway, I think they have enough really good quality footballers, and I think that's why yesterday will be massive, because of the actual self-belief and confidence that they will take from it. It's knowing when to pick a pass inside to your inside men. Like I still wouldn't be risk averse to putting a long ball in to Damien Comer and having runners coming off him, because he has the physical attributes to win that ball, and then he has the quality to come off either shoulder, whether it's Finnerty or Walsh from either wing. So for me, like, I think you have to ask their questions. I know to a certain extent you do still need to play the game on their terms, but ultimately if you want to beat them, you need to do what suits you best. And Galway need to be working on that fine balance over the next few weeks in terms of being composed in possession at all times, but still asking questions of the Derry full-back line in their full-back line. You know, not having Comer doing what Michael Murphy done and coming out the field to try and get on balls and working 1-2s and trying to bust through tackles from there, because it takes the likes of your Brendan Rodgers out the field. You've seen what Conor McCluskey done the other day, Chrissy McKay stopped taking shots. So Derry defenders, they are more than happy if you start taking them out the field. So it's Galway finding that right balance between being sensible what to do in play, but also still having their danger men in the right areas, that they can cause Derry trouble.
One of the things you mentioned, Corofin there, like obviously the Slaughtneil players have the experience of going to the end of the season in big games, and so this isn't an inexperienced Derry side, even though at this level they don't have this experience at senior inter-county level. So there's no fear when you're talking about what level of performance we're going to get from them. Derry will show up against Galway, no matter what is thrown at them. I get the sense that they're going to play to their potential in this game.
And that's the incredible thing about what they've done this year. I sort of felt that the Tyrone performance, I would have thought, well, I would have known with Rory Gallagher that they were going to be so well set up, so focused, so motivated all year with this one big game in place. But to then go and back it up since is incredible. And it just goes to show how focused and how united as a group they are, and how much they have bought into him and his philosophies. And they're going to be incredibly hard to beat. Like, this game is going to the wire. Galway need to prepare for what happened yesterday again, because like there's no way this is going to be an easy day out for anybody. Derry will go for the full 70 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever it takes. And for me, that is the biggest thing that they have improved on this year in terms of the style of football they play and the high energy and men behind the ball. We've seen all that a million times, and so many teams have tried to replicate it since Jimmy McGuinness broke in with this Donegal team in the early, it was 11, 12, obviously, whenever they won the All-Ireland. But no one has been able to even get close to replicate doing what they were doing until this Derry team. It's been absolutely incredible, the turnaround in them, considering where they've come over this past few years. And even they could have taken a huge knockback in terms of the hiding that Galway gave them in Owen Begg, the second last league game, whenever basically everything was riding in that game. It could have derailed them completely, where players could have, within themselves and maybe their own weak groups, felt like, are we doing the right thing in terms of how we're tactically set up? But they obviously brushed it off very easily, put it off as a one-off, and they've regrouped hugely from that.
Like, and the thing with the Jim McGuinness comparison and the Donegal comparison is that it feels like that this Derry team could get over the line at the first time of asking. It kind of feels like whatever they were doing over the last few years of COVID has made a real difference, in a way that, Donegal obviously had to lose that semi-final in 2011 and come back a more evolved team in 2012. Like, I may be getting way carried away with Saturday here, but it feels like Derry are closer to the finished article this year than Donegal potentially were in 2011.
To be fair, you wouldn't be that far gone. Like, whenever it's the ruthlessness that they had the other day, and how much they wanted to go for the throat straight away. And you can say, right, it's only Clare, but it was an All-Ireland quarter-final. It was a big game for Derry too. Like, they could have been a hangover from the Ulster final. They could have been happy with their lot, but they're clearly not. They're absolutely, they've ticked one box now. And it wasn't about winning a quarter-final, and it won't be about winning the semi-final, and they won't openly come out and say it, but they're going to win the All-Ireland. That's all that they have in their head, and that's a difficult animal to hold back whenever they're playing with the energy and the intensity and the madness that they are at the moment that they have throughout the whole championship. So no, they are very much focused on, they want to win this All-Ireland, and it's not a matter of waiting for next year and hopefully evolve and develop and get a few more players. No, it's now. Their plan is to win the All-Ireland this year. Well, they've not wait anymore.
The point about the Clare thing is, like, as you say, people will go, oh, it's only Clare, but they've done exactly the same thing against Division 1 teams in Ulster the whole way through. They've always, when there's been a goal opportunity on, they've been like, yeah, we're going to take that. There's no fisting the ball over the bar with these guys.
No, and that's why it would be lazy analysis to turn around and try and throw it at, it's just Clare. It would be disrespectful, obviously, Clare, and very disrespectful to Derry. They've been doing this, like, they went after Tyrone. Tyrone were absolutely annihilated as All-Ireland champions within their own backyard. Monaghan done everything they could to stick with them, couldn't do it. Derry, or Donegal, to be fair, maybe looked late on like they maybe had them beat, but Derry just stuck to their principles, stuck to what they were going to do, and chased down what looked like a defeat and managed to salvage a win out of it. So they won't care. They won't care who they come up against. The self-belief and the drive that was within that group. They, like I said, they've ticked one box, but they'll absolutely have visions of something much bigger.
Pádraig Joyce was very against penalty shootouts. This is not soccer, essentially, was what he was saying. Ciarán McGeeney was like, look, the way things are at the moment, asking fans and supporters to come to Dublin again, it's too expensive. We all knew what the story was heading into the championship. there's heartbreak in sport. Like, it's what it is. Where do you stand on this morning?
I agree. It is what it is. We knew before the season started that there's going to be penalties. Everyone from Armagh was saying, as we were leaving the ground yesterday, that's no way to lose. But my thing is, so say if we come back next weekend, obviously you have the expense for families and supporters. But then what happens if it ends in a draw next week and the All-Ireland semi-finals the following week? Do we have to go to penalties next week? Is it okay next week? If you know what the rules are, you can't be complaining today about it. It is what it is. I would have rather the game to be finished and completed yesterday. It's not ideal. It's new in terms of this stage of knockout championship football. But my thing is, if it was a draw next week, it went extra time, it was still a draw, we're going to have to do penalties at some stage, So, and I would rather, if we had been lucky enough to get over yesterday, to have your week's break, to then go and prepare for an All-Ireland semi-final. So the big thing that we always spoke about for years in terms of your calendar that was going to accommodate your club and your county players and give certainty was that you had to put a proper structure, and the only way that you can guarantee that you're going to finish out games and not having them dragging on all year is by playing to a close on the day. And the biggest probably issue in terms of I would have as a GA person yesterday was what happened to Mayo and Kerry. I don't know how they remain focused, and I would be fairly sure that the drag on and the layoff in their game affected their game. It affected the atmosphere obviously in their game, but psychologically it had to be a huge hindrance to both those players. So I definitely think in terms of the time that it took for penalties and that there, that the GA absolutely have to tighten up on that. It seemed like it took forever. It could have took about 20 minutes from the end of extra time for the penalties. I couldn't understand. Maybe it was because it was the such biggest high profile game, it was on TV, they were trying to tick every box, but it just took forever and the atmosphere nearly died with us. So that's the biggest thing that I think the GA needs to go to. If we're going to go for penalties, that's fine. We all know where to stand. Get out and get practicing them. It's as simple as that. I heard obviously Sean Cavanagh saying it's not a fundamental of our game in terms of penalty taking, but free takers are the ones who go out and practice after training every night because they're going to hit the frees. So if you're going to be hitting penalties, get out and practice every night, and we can't be using it as an excuse.
I agree with that 100%. Aaron, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Not a problem, man.
I'd say maybe excluding the era of the 80-minute finals, that might have been the longest game of Gaelic football ever in recorded history, because it was endless.
So long. I was bursting as well. I was like, I'll wait till after the game to go upstairs, and I was like,
never went.
This is going on for quite a while. I just didn't want to miss a second of it, because there was going to be massive queues. There's massive queues everywhere in Croke Park yesterday. It just was interminable. What time did the second game start at?
5:40 or something.
Oh
ridiculous.
My God,
I don't know.
And also, somebody made the point outside Croke Park to me yesterday, is like do players take caffeine tablets? Kerry Mayo players were coming up off their caffeine and coming down off their caffeine, and the whole stadium was just in a massive lull when that game started, and it felt like it. It just was. I was absolutely exhausted. Had to take deep breaths during that Galway Armagh game. It was, as a neutral, the most excited I think I've ever been for a sporting event.
We put a Twitter poll up asking whether or not GA games should be settled by penalty shootouts. 54% say no, 46% say yes. I'm in full agreement with Aaron Kernan there, though. It's actually unfair to ask everybody in this game to come back for a replay, because it automatically handicaps them against whoever's in the waiting for them on the other side. In an All-Ireland final, go to replay, no problems.
Yeah, and I especially agree with his point there, where he's would penalties be okay next week?
Yeah.
I don't really agree with this kind of fundamental. It's not a fundamental part of GA argument at all. I do think there's some credence to the argument.
Kicking the ball is a fundamental part of the game of football. It turns out.
Yeah, and penalties in soccer aren't necessarily a fundamental skill of the game. Penalties are awarded in soccer. Penalties are awarded in Gaelic football in real time. They are a similarly seldom occurrence in both of the games or whatever, and also something that only one player takes per team in open play. But I don't agree with fundamental stuff. But I do think there's maybe some credit in the argument about replays should be decided first, and then a penalty shootout just in the bigger games. And I'm just saying that from a purely selfish standpoint, I would watch that again yesterday.
Yeah. All right. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back tomorrow from 7:30. Pearl Slattery is going to be on hand to review the Republic of Ireland against Georgia, which is live on OTB Sports Radio this evening. On Callaghan will be chatting all things Cork GAA. Tommy Walsh will preview the All-Ireland hurling semi-finals, and Deal or No Deal is back right now. We're leaving you with Sunday Paper Review, Cliona Foley and Tommy Martin speaking with Joe. Enjoy.
Henrik Stenson's management team have been in talks with Liv. This is the Ryder Cup captain next year.
Yeah, that would be hugely significant. There's this story of David Walsh in the Sunday Times, and also James Corrigan has a story about it, and a lot of it around what degree will the Liv Tour, will the Saudis basically cover the cost of the fines? And that's an interesting one. In the James Corrigan piece, there's a quote from an agent of one of the Liv players who appeared at Centurion to say they had yet to hear from Liv, because Liv had obviously promised them at the time, listen, we'll cover any fines you get. And the quote is, we thought Liv would make a big play of this and come straight out and say, don't worry, we'll handle this, the agent said. But obviously they haven't, and speculating that Liv are going softly with the European Tour, with the DP Tour, that maybe down the line, this, let's not bring out the big guns yet. And then the flip side of that is that there appears to be, there's a line later in that piece, Keith Pelly, the DP World Tour Chief Executive, has been inundated by players who have stayed loyal, asking why the Europe rebels were not treated with similar stringency as the PGA Tour rebels, who were obviously indefinitely suspended from the tour, rather than simply being fined, a fine that would likely be paid by the Liv in the end. So the European Tour, I guess, are in the position where the people who have stayed loyal are kind of going, what's going on here? Are you going to come down heavy on these guys? Is this going to, we've stuck with you. We're all in. We believe in this tour. You gotta step up here. And what are the DP Tour top brass thinking? Are they thinking, we don't want to get into a real big war because there might be a détente somewhere down the line where we're all buddies again? So I guess that's. But the Ryder Cup one is probably going to be a big high-profile story. Whether if Stenson joins with the Liv Tour.
For sure. There is a quote in that Dave Walsh piece on the front page of the Sunday Times where one European Tour official says, should Henrik cross to the other side, I even love the language there.
The dark side.
Dark side.
He will not be captain at next year's Ryder Cup, which would be quite the story. And
the Corrigan piece as well intimates that there is just possibility that with each time they'd play that they'll double up the fines, and so therefore as well that's why Liv are probably holding back to see what's going to happen exactly on it. So it's unedifying on all sides, isn't it, really? Because it's bottom line is about money, but the bigger the names go over, that'll probably raise the big questions.
Hugely significant, because I think the Brooks captain, the one on top of the other players, now it's sort of real, and it's like, well, this isn't going away, and and it's getting, and I mean, Rory McIlroy on the other side as the spokesperson, the sort of Luke Skywalker of the of the operation. Like, he's not holding back on the stuff he's saying.
No,
there's that. I mean,
called Brooks duplicitous.
Yeah.
Word, yeah.
I mean, that quote, I know you tweeted it out today. I read it last night as well, about Sergio saying, finally we're getting paid what we're worth. He says, we're golfers, we shouldn't be paid anything.
We're already paid way too much.
Yeah.
Never mind the appearance money.
One last point just to touch on, and then we'll move off to golf, but it is right across the pages, you have to say, this afternoon. And the attention of the golfing world is going to be on Ireland next week. That is most certainly not because of the Irish Open, which will have 0 players ranked in the top 10 at the event. It's because of the JP McManus Pro-Am on the Monday and Tuesday after the Irish Open, which of the players in the top 10 will have 9 of them playing. There's a comparison here of how the two fields stack up. So, for instance, majors won by field at the Irish Open 4, majors won by the field at the JP McManus Pro-Am 49. A number of major winners at the Irish Open 2, number of major winners at the JP McManus Pro-Am 21. So it really is, I mean, it's extraordinary. Like, there isn't a concentration of talent like it outside of the 4 majors across the golfing year. And Dennis Walsh looks at one of the more intriguing aspects of the JP McManus Pro-Am, how JP and Tiger created the biggest event in Irish golf, and he's trying to, I suppose, chart the discreet friendship that has animated the McManus Pro-Am. I think everybody's quite curious about this relationship that they have. So, for instance, your first thought would be money, But Dennis Walsh says here of the Pro Am in 2000, when an Irish tabloid claimed that Tiger was being paid his usual appearance fee of $1 million to play at the JP McManus Pro Am, the tournament host called the reporter directly and a retraction was published without delay. Woods didn't take a cent. And when he won the event, which was £30,000 at the time, he put his winner's cheque back into the pot. So what was he doing there, and why has he kept coming back? Asked Dennis Walsh. The simple, unvarnished answer Dennis has is friendship. Contact first made in 1998. McManus, Dermot Desmond met with Mark O'Meara, Payne, Stewart and Woods at the Isleworth Golf Club in Florida, persuaded them a few days of links golf in Ireland would be the ideal preparation for the Open. Once they landed in Sheahan, they were taken by helicopter to Waterville. A few days of golfing, fishing, dining out, drinking late. They loved it so much. A year later they came back, and McManus first invited Woods in 2000 at the 99 Ryder Cup at Brookline. He was assembling a field, and according to McManus's account, he raised the possibility of Woods dropping by, not necessarily as a player but as a guest. Woods could read clearly between the lines. If you're asking me, he said, I'm coming. And neither of them have elaborated on their friendship, but Dennis Walsh points out that Woods married Ellen Nordigan in October 2004 at Sandy Lane, which is the resort in Barbados, partly owned by McManus, and it seems
far more interesting. It was reported, though not confirmed by McManus, because he doesn't confirm anything, that when he spent 40 million redeveloping Martinstown, his Limerick mansion, that a room was set aside for whenever Woods and Nordigan came to visit. And there are many rooms in that house. I remember seeing a plan of it once. It's an unusual thing, isn't it?
Not very hard.
The one thing you could say is, the one thing you can say about very rich people, and they tend to be men, is if you're that rich and you're that famous and you meet somebody who's equally rich and very discreet and has no reason
that doesn't
need anything from you or want anything from you, and I always think that that's probably why Woods connected so well with him, because here was somebody who was asked him to come along to a thing, do him a favour. It was a charity event, still is, and it has raised massive amounts.
He's told it to
and that's totaled here. Yeah, that's the one thing about it. I think it's
140 million raised for good cause.
I think the last one
phenomenal.
Last one 10 years ago raised 40.
Yeah, so
they're going to break that.
I think there's that element of it, isn't there? That if you're that paranoid, as Tiger clearly is, given his life story, and you meet somebody who doesn't want anything from you and offers you the hand of friendship and the opportunity to go somewhere, and just be yourself and relax. I think that's.
Yeah.
It
I think
seems
there's
to me
a
that
great
would
piece
be it.
because, as you say, it pulls back the curtain on that world a bit. I remember being reporting at the 2010 one and being on the fairway watching Woods, and there's a few lines from that press conference, because it was Woods' first appearance outside of the US after the scandal.
Yeah.
I never forget that press conference that he did before the Pro-Am. He was a ball of hostility and Ox indeed, yeah. Hostility, just absolute, because every reporter there was told to go there and ask him a question that somehow kind of it was part of the sort of general kicking that he was getting, and there's quotes here, one-word answers and everything, and he was just that hostile, angry, whatever ball of emotions that he was at that time. And then following him on the course, he was waiting to tee off at one of the holes, and up ahead of him was the 4-ball involving Dermot Desmond. And so Dermot Desmond is obviously playing his shot about 100 yards up ahead, sees Tiger Woods. The two of them walk towards each other and throw their arms open wide and give the biggest hug, backslapping hug, and a genuine sort of a genuine expression of emotion or friendship or great to see you, whatever. There was a whole lot encountered in that. I was going, what is that? This is Tiger Woods. This is a guy beyond the stratosphere of any. Very few sports stars are in that sort of realm of significance and cultural import. And I've never seen him, publicly engage with another human being in that way. And so what is it? And I guess this piece sort of maybe touches behind, pulls back that curtain, and it's just that sort of thing of, here's another rich people who don't want anything from me. Show me a good time. I can relax. And I don't know what it was, but it was really it really hinted at what the weird and really incredible kind of dynamic behind this whole This whole thing is.
It's so odd because I feel Tiger Woods must meet billionaires most weeks of his life as well. Hank Haney has a podcast, Woods' former coach, and he was chatting about the JP McManus problem because I was again you wouldn't think they'd have natural things in common necessarily or be chatting for hours on end about Limerick hurling. You know? And Haney's pretty forthright, and he was saying his sense of it was you get treated so well, it's such a good time. That's basically the nub of it.
Yeah, but I think with JP McManus and this piece, mind you, as well, does point out, which I always think is worth pointing out, that for all of his philanthropy, he's a tax exile, you know, and that's all part of where he is in his life. But there's a discretion about he doesn't talk. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't speak to anybody.
Yeah.
He really does not engage with media at all. So maybe that's part,
trust,
particularly that part for Woods.
You're probably right. For the golfer who's named his yacht Privacy.
Yeah, exactly.
You might value that in a fellow billionaire.
You would love to listen into a few conversations though. It would be interesting.
Absolutely. Well, he's going to be there on Monday, Tuesday week. Didn't play the US Open, but he's there at the JP McManus Prom, so that'll be extraordinary, really. And that's on after the Irish Open, which is on this week. That is the golf done and dusted with. So, like I said, lots of it in the papers this afternoon. On the rugby front, I have that jotted down next. There's a huge amount of previewing of Ireland, New Zealand.
Yeah, there's massive. The Sunday Times go really big.
Really
on it. They've got a 7-page special, but it's not just on Ireland. It's on the tours. Well, it's also on the home nations and where they're going and what's going to happen. You know, you could be reading about it forever, really, because there's, you know, and there's a little. They have all the dates and everything, and the Sunday Times have done that. All the papers have, but I actually like the Mail on Sundays because I think Rory Keane's piece about it kind of encompasses everything that everybody's asking about the Irish team and about team selections and all the rest. And then there's a good piece too by Hugh Farrell, who would have been down in New Zealand in 2012, you know, and he has kind of a, you know, good memory, good insight into that particular tour as well. But Roy Keane really summarises quite a lot of I think what Ireland are going to be facing and the key issues for them. You know, Kieran Frawley's raised positionally, you know, the first test is always your best chance to beat them. It's all that sort of themes that is being rehearsed. And of course, very interesting, which paper is it? The Sunday Times point out that Joe Schmidt will not be doing any interviews because his contract doesn't start until after the tour, and that's an interesting piece as well. Is that Peter O'Reilly? Ireland's black spot is the headline on that as well, so that bit might interest people as well, just talking about Schmidt's place in the background and I thought the interesting was for his first presentation, even Bowden Barrett turned up with a notepad and pen ready to scribble down every relevant details or perhaps afraid to miss a detail.
Yeah.
Schmidt's reputation as a martinet clearly preceded him, but it's going to be a sensitive area, I'd say.
Yeah, he said, Peter Riley, this is because the general tone is, like in Rory's piece, is Ireland are balancing trying to develop certain players with the value of winning a test match on New Zealand soil. But 2 weeks ago, Ireland Rugby Media received a group message from All Blacks Communications Department. Joe Schmidt would not be doing any interviews before the test series. They were shocked, Peter O'Reilly didn't say. We were reminded that Schmidt's new role as All Blacks selector/analyst, that's his official title, does not begin until after the Irish Rugby Tour, in time for the Rugby Championship. He says perhaps not, but this has not stopped the cult of Joe growing in New Zealand, because in effect Joe Schmidt's been involved with the Blues of late. Again, no precise coaching title, but he's done an extraordinary job. There's been a massive upturn in the Blues play since Schmidt went in, and now Ian Foster, who's under massive pressure because obviously Ireland beat them in November and France beat them as well, and so he's been spending the months trying to convince Schmidt to get involved. I'd say there's a degree of get him in so he doesn't take over if this goes badly. There's a bit of that.
Exactly.
And so the sense Peter Riley has is that once you get Schmidt involved, he just won't be able to help himself then. And he said that's what happened with the Blues, that, you know, he just went in initially as like a consultant, but pretty soon he's down there doing the warm-ups in his tracksuit and, you know, affecting everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So Schmidt's going to be there in some capacity and presumably heavily involved, but won't be speaking to the media or won't be to the fore, but you would anticipate he'll have his fingerprints over everything. But that is kind of an interesting subplot.
Yeah, and as I said, Roy Keane's piece kind of summarises all the things. You know, how do you prepare for the next World Cup and this Test series with an aging, with some aging players, with front row. There's all kind of a lot of people rehearse the same kind of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that piece does summarise the themes, which is that there's potentially huge upside in this tour for the Irish setup, with that whole pre-World Cup momentum, and imagine another milestone would be winning in New Zealand, but there seems to be huge downsides as well, because you go to New Zealand and you're not at yourself, and they're absolutely at themselves. You can get absolutely murdered. And I think that's all there, which I kind of can't help but feel to have such potentially big things riding on what is an end of season tour. Like, I just cannot get my head around rugby being played in July. I know. And I know it's not July. I know it's July over there, but it's winter over there. But I just sometimes feel our summer tour guys going out, it always feels a bit like, oh God, here we go.
They feel in November.
Which is probably
and
what
you're hitting them at the time of year when they're much fitter. So that's the thing.
It just always seems like a tough ask.
It is, and there's loads of people pointing out what's happened before, and the first test is your best chance to beat them, even though we haven't won there in years. But if it goes wrong, usually everything can come off.
They're saying you're a long way from home.
It's no coincidence.
Especially New Zealand, do they like to point that out?
They're saying in the papers as well, it's no coincidence that New Zealand have chosen Eden Park for the first game, where they haven't been beaten since '94. So they recognise as well, let's win the first game and then we're up and running. I'm curious for both your thoughts on what we have here in Luther Burrell, because this could potentially become an inquiry akin to what we saw in cricket, in rugby. Luther Burrell has played for England. He's 32 years of age. He'd be a very well-known player. And he's been interviewed exclusively here by Nick Simon in the Mail on Sunday about racism in the dressing room. And the initial part of the interview is how Nick Simon had a phone call with Luther Burrell about racism in rugby more generally a while back, and his answer was, it's rife. And then they went for an off-the-record dinner a few months later, and Luther Burrell talked about what he had experienced and has now decided to go public with it. And he talks about how, I've been nervous doing this. They met in a coffee shop. I didn't sleep much last night. This is a scary subject to broach. I don't know how it will be received. And he talked about his dad, wondering, are you going to do it, not do it? And he said, I'm going to do it. He stresses he's not going to name names. He says, this isn't a witch hunt. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. A lot of what's said isn't even malicious, but it's become normal and it needs to be addressed. And he talked about, in part, what helped him make up his mind up about going public was the thought of his mixed-race children being on the receiving end of what he's received. So, for instance, Burrell's been in the professional game since '06. He said, things get said in jest without any thought every week, every fortnight. Comments about bananas when you're making a smoothie in the morning. Comments about fried chicken when you're out for dinner. I've heard things you wouldn't expect to hear 20 years ago. We had a hot day at training and I told one of the lads to put on their Factor 50. Someone came back and said, you don't need it, Luth. Put your carrot oil on. Then another lad jumps in and says, no, he'll need it for where his shackles were as a slave. Excuse my language, but where the F does that come from? Some people shake their heads, others laugh along with it. People greet you as, what's up my N? It's not meant in a bad way, but when is it going to change? It's a very, very raw subject. Over the past few years, it has happened a lot. That's the environment. It's normalised because it's normalised because I allowed it to become normalised. I'd laugh it off. I've been a coward by not speaking up. Over the years, I've become thicker skinned. And he said he's at an age now at 32 where he feels he can speak up. He says if you're 20 and there's a hierarchy, you're just told, be quiet. And so it's hard for a younger player to speak up. He says, after a few beers, I have said to fellow teammates, mate, you've got to stop saying that. But it never changed anything. You just get, we love you really, mate, back. If I was 10 years younger, no way would I be sat here doing this. You want to fit in. He says, I'm sure there are clubs that don't have a problem, but rugby clubs don't have HR departments like the real world.
Wanda Lyons, he says rugby's a high testosterone environment with a lot of big personalities. I can't believe those comments. I mean, I can't credit that adult people would use those comments. Do you know what I mean? It's just beyond my comprehension. And all you can, now we don't know whether they're fellow club players, fellow schools players, fellow internationals, but either way, I just can't believe that anybody thinks like that. And it's just absolutely shocking. We were just talking about it and saying that, maybe you will have a situation like cricket in England where it might spark an investigation, or certainly he says he won't name names. There are some really interesting things. He it smacks of that, entitled, that entitled obnoxiousness that just comes from people who are you know, I just see themselves as superior to everybody else. And, you know, he says rugby definitely has a class issue, and he talks about Ellis Genge, and, you know, he makes that point, he says about Genge getting messages calling him a N-word, would Mario Itoje, you know, and that always has been like Mario, it's always been pointed out Mario Itoje comes from that private school background, you know. But whatever, or wherever people come from, it's just shocking. You know, he talks about growing up in a council estate in Huddersfield. His parents worked exceptionally hard and I wasn't given any freebies. Do football changing rooms have this type of stuff being around? No, because it's far more diverse. I actually disagree with that. I suspect football... I suspect there is some element of it, and we see this racism in British football. So we know there is an element of it, but is there more a class element to this, you know, and is racism more pronounced for that reason, perhaps, you know, in English rugby? But I find it shocking, really shocking.
He does talk about class as well. He said you see the rugby culture and you see the cricket culture, they're a very similar class. Guys from these feeder schools, at the stuff that came out from cricket recently didn't surprise me, he says.
Yeah, it's that privileged, entitled thing of, you know, we're going to always follow this course in life because we have, you know, we have private educations. You know, this will take us certain places in our lives, and so we're for some reason we can make comments, you know, and judge other people. I think I really think what's interesting is I don't know whether you noticed this towards the end of this interview, and he says, "I'll tell you what's funny. All the black people I spoke to about this, in other words, about talking out about this, said, do it. The white people are all supportive."